Chapter 943. Where did this ferocious man come from? Wu Kuang was actually unable to fight back against him. Seeing Chu Fengmian and the people from the Holy King sect leave, the martial artists of Sky-Reaching Tower were finally relieved. During the conflict, they could only tremble in fear. It was only after everyone had left that they could finally catch their breath. Wu Kuang's strength isn't the best in this year's competition, but he's still a top figure. If he's lucky, he might even enter the top 100. I didn't expect him to lose so badly. And this person is only in the divine martial realm. He's one level lower than Wu Kuang, but he's so strong. There was a huge gap between each level of the life and death steps. Many of the geniuses from the 7 major sects could only cross one level. The disciples of the 7 major sects were all geniuses. They were invincible in the same level. Chu Fengmian was only in the divine martial realm, but he could easily defeat Wu Kuang. This was what surprised everyone the most. Could it be that this person is hiding his level? With this strength, he's at least an ancestor in the heart-refining realm, or an emperor who's deliberately hiding his level. One of the martial artists speculated, disagreeing with Lin Fan's words. As soon as he finished speaking, a martial artist next to him said disdainfully, "How is that possible? If he's an emperor, how could Wu Kuang be so arrogant? In my opinion, this person isn't from the domain, but a hidden genius from the other domains. The 9 domains are so big that any kind of genius can be born. Let's wait and see. When the martial competition begins, this person will definitely stand out." After a long discussion, the group of martial artists gradually dispersed. Today's matter became a topic of conversation, and it gradually spread from the martial imperial city. Mysterious geniuses were always enough to attract people's attention. On the other side, Chu Fengmian didn't know that his matter had caused a commotion. He and Luo Shi followed the woman all the way to the interior of Sky-Reaching Tower. From the outside, Sky-Reaching Tower looked like it was only a few dozen stories high, but inside, there was another world. The interior of Heavenly Tower was simply divided into small worlds. Each room was an independent space. Even an emperor couldn't pry into it. Soon, the two of them arrived at the deepest part of the Heavenly Connecting Tower, arriving at a space. This room was basically a courtyard. It was an extremely large courtyard. There were mountains, rivers, and even an orchard. "Seniors, you can rest as much as you want. When the 9 regions genius battle is about to begin, I'll call you too," the woman said respectfully. "If you want to buy spiritual herbs or information, feel free to call me over." "You've done well." Chu Fengmian nodded. With a thought, a royal-grade spirit stone appeared in his hand and he tossed it to the woman. "Thank you, senior." The woman was excited. She took the royal-grade spirit stone and quickly expressed her gratitude. The royal spiritual emperor's worth a fortune, and it was worth it. Chu Fengmian had never been a stingy person. Chu Fengmian was very satisfied that the woman had not said anything when she had been threatened by Wu Kuang. After sending the woman away, Chu Fengmian stepped into the courtyard. Gu Jin, on the other hand, began to cultivate in another courtyard beside Chu Fengmian. Gu Jin had just made a breakthrough. These few days were enough for her to consolidate her cultivation and prepare for the 9 regions genius battle. As for Chu Fengmian, he didn't need to prepare. Although he had just made a move, Chu Fengmian had the divine pulse. He could recover to his peak state at any moment. He didn't need to prepare for a few days in advance. The rooms in Sky-Reaching Tower are really luxurious. The spiritual energy here is as rich as the 7 great sects' holy lands. Chu Fengmian sat on a stone bench in the courtyard, looking at a pond beside him. The pond wasn't water, but water condensed from extremely pure spiritual energy. The entire courtyard was filled with spiritual energy. For ordinary cultivators, it was enough for them to recover their spiritual energy. If they stayed in the courtyard for a long time, their cultivation speed would be much faster. Chu Fengmian also felt a trace of chaotic energy from the spiritual energy. The source of this spiritual energy was an ancient spiritual spring that contained the aura of chaos. The law of chaos was mysterious and unfathomable. Countless emperors and even supreme ancestors tried to comprehend it. It was said that everything in the world was born from chaotic energy. The primal chaos represented the origin of everything. Whoever could comprehend the primal chaos, regardless of whether it was martial skills or control of spiritual power, would increase exponentially. He didn't expect Sky-Reaching Tower to be so generous as to own an ancient spiritual spring that contained chaotic energy. Chu Fengmian slowly absorbed the chaotic energy contained in the spiritual energy. His body relaxed a lot, and even his mind became very clear. Under the stimulation of the chaotic energy, the 9-region sword technique in Chu Fengmian's mind began to change. It began to change in a more perfect direction. Chu Fengmian sat on the stone bench and slowly closed his eyes. An ancient book condensed in front of him. The words 9 regions appeared in this ancient book. This ancient book was the condensation of Chu Fengmian's 9-region sword technique. When the ancient book was opened, one could see the countless sword techniques that Chu Fengmian had integrated into it. Many of these sword techniques were enough to make a sword sect like the Tianjian sect go crazy. Now, they were all integrated into the 9-region sword technique. I thought that the 9-region sword technique had begun to reach perfection, but now it seems that it's still full of holes and loopholes. It seems that it's easier said than done to create a perfect sword technique. Chu Fengmian observed the 9-region sword technique and couldn't help but sigh. Chu Fengmian once thought that his 9-region sword technique was about to reach perfection. However, this time, as Chu Fengmian's strength increased, he looked at the 9-region sword technique again and found that it still had many shortcomings. As his strength increased, Chu Fengmian's vision became wider and wider. Naturally, he could see many shortcomings of the 9-region sword technique. This was something that Chu Fengmian couldn't see before. However, this was a good thing. Only by constantly seeing the shortcomings could Chu Fengmian perfect the 9-region sword technique and make it more and more perfect. Chu Fengmian condensed his spiritual energy and slowly made up for the shortcomings of the 9-region sword technique. In his eyes, a figure was constantly performing countless sword techniques and practicing them. Chapter 944. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes, and there was a hint of helplessness in his eyes. At the end of the phone, the chaotic aura in this courtyard was actually quite dense. It was enough for some ancestors or even emperors to practice martial arts and comprehend the laws. However, for a glutton like Chu Fengmian, the 9-realm swordsmanship that he wanted to practice was too complicated. How complicated was the 9-realm swordsmanship that fused with countless swordsmanship in the world? It could be said that there was no swordsmanship, martial arts, or technique in the entire 9 realms that was comparable to his. The chaotic aura in this courtyard was not even enough to support 1% of Chu Fengmian's practice of the 9-realm swordsmanship. It was exhausted. It would take at least a few days for the chaotic aura to fill the courtyard. Chu Fengmian could not afford to wait. I originally wanted to use this chaotic aura to practice the 9-realm swordsmanship to make up for my shortcomings. Chu Fengmian was a little helpless. An ancient spirit spring with chaotic aura was extremely rare in the entire 9 realms. Chu Fengmian had obtained countless treasures, but he had never found one. It could only be considered a pleasant surprise to encounter one in Sky-Reaching Tower, but it was still not enough. However, Chu Fengmian would not be willing to give up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The direction of this spiritual power seems to be traceable. Chu Fengmian gradually sensed where the spiritual power came from, even though it was hidden. Although it was hidden, it still could not be hidden from Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense. Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense moved and gradually felt the direction of the spiritual power. Following the direction of the spiritual power, Chu Fengmian might find the spirit spring of Sky-Reaching Tower. Let's go and explore first. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he made a decision. Such an opportunity was once in a lifetime. Even though there were many experts in Sky-Reaching Tower, Chu Fengmian was very careful. Not everyone was able to find his traces. Chu Fengmian quietly condensed a sword intent and turned it into a small godly devouring python. Following Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense, it directly drilled into a restriction. This restriction was the passage that connected the courtyard to the spirit spring. Although it was not hidden, it was still detected by Chu Fengmian. His godly devouring python carefully and slowly drilled into the restriction. He did not know how long he had been walking. Suddenly, some gray fog appeared in front of them. What a powerful restriction! Chu Fengmian observed a restriction that suddenly appeared in front of him. The restriction was still very new. It appeared that it had been set up for less than 10 years. The power contained within the mask was extremely terrifying. It was stronger than any power Chu Fengmian had ever seen. What a big deal! This restriction is set up by at least 5 old ancestors who are in the immortal realm. Chu Fengmian carefully observed for a moment and then gasped in shock. The forbidding aura was set up by 5 progenitors of the supreme realm. Ancestor Wu was the absolute pinnacle even among the 7 sects. A force that could take out 5 supreme ancestors was definitely not inferior to the 7 major sections. They actually set up such a powerful restriction. What kind of secret is this spirit spring hiding? The more powerful the restriction was, the more secretive the secret behind the restriction was. Chu Fengmian observed the divine sky-devouring python carefully. Then, he noticed that it was slowly approaching him. Then, he gradually drilled through the edge of the restriction. He penetrated through the layer of restriction without triggering it. The restriction was only to block the spiritual power. Once it sensed the spiritual power, it would be activated and burst out. Chu Fengmian's divine sky-devouring python was condensed by sword essence. Therefore, although the restriction was powerful, the divine sky-devouring python was unobstructed. Even Ancestor Wu, who had set up the restriction, did not expect that the sword essence would sneak in. However, in the entire 9 regions, except for Chu Fengmian, it was hard to say whether there was anyone else who could achieve this kind of sword essence manifestation. After all, this was a level that countless Sword Dao Grandmasters could not achieve even in their dreams. The divine sky-devouring python went through the restriction without any obstruction. This is underground? There's actually such a huge spirit spring hidden under the martial imperial city? Chu Fengmian suddenly realized that the divine sky-devouring python had followed him all the way to the underground of the martial imperial city. At the depth of thousands of meters underground, there was a huge spirit spring. My God! What a huge spirit spring this is! Chu Fengmian's consciousness merged with the divine sky-devouring python and came all the way to the underground spirit spring of the martial imperial city. When he opened his eyes, there was endless gray fog in front of him. This gray fog was none other than the color of the primal chaos. Chu Fengmian scanned the underground spirit spring with his spiritual consciousness. He could not see the end of it. It was extremely huge. The 9 regions actually have such a huge spirit spring? Chu Fengmian's expression was extremely shocked. In his previous life, he had seen countless spirit springs. Chu Fengmian had even seen the spirit springs of the 7 great sects. However, the spirit spring under the martial imperial city was much bigger than the spirit springs of the 7 great sects. This spirit spring was much bigger than all the known spirit springs in the 9 regions. Only then did Chu Fengmian realize what kind of place he had barged into. No one in the 9 regions knew this shocking secret. If the news that there was such a huge spiritual spring under the martial imperial city was spread out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. It was enough to trigger a great war in the 9 regions. The 7 great sects could shed all pretenses and start a chaotic war. Whoever could obtain such a huge spirit spring would be able to establish a force that surpassed the 7 great sects. Chu Fengmian nervously observed every movement around him. Such a spirit spring should not be unguarded. Chu Fengmian carefully observed his surroundings. When he sensed that there was no abnormality, Chu Fengmian finally let out a sigh of relief. Chu Fengmian's divine sky-devouring python was formed by sword intent. It was extremely weak. In this spirit spring, it was almost equivalent to a drop of water in the ocean. Once it merged with the spirit spring, it would be very difficult to detect. The more Chu Fengmian used his spiritual consciousness to observe the spirit spring, the more he could feel the vastness of this spirit spring. Even his heart did not want to take this spirit spring for himself. If Chu Fengmian could take this spirit spring for himself, he could almost break through to the 9th step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm, and become an ancestor. Chapter 945. The spiritual energy contained in the spiritual spring was simply unimaginable. It was impossible to calculate how much spiritual energy there was. No matter how big the appetite of the Dragon War skill was, it was enough to fill him up. Even a saint or a supreme ancestor, regardless of their status, would not be able to resist the urge to take the spiritual spring for themselves. However, Chu Fengmian was clear that the spiritual spring was not something that he could take. Not to mention the enormous size of the spiritual spring, it was impossible for Chu Fengmian to take it. The restriction on the spiritual spring was proof that someone had already discovered the spiritual spring. There were at least 5 supreme ancestors in the immortal realm guarding it. Any supreme ancestor in the immortal realm could easily kill Chu Fengmian. Not to mention 5 supreme ancestors. The idea of taking the spiritual spring could only be hidden in the bottom of Chu Fengmian's heart. When Chu Fengmian became stronger in the future, he might have a chance. At least for now, it was something that was far from possible. However, since he was already here, he naturally wouldn't come here for nothing. It was impossible for him to take away the spiritual spring directly. However, it was still possible to devour some of the chaotic aura. The spiritual spring was so huge that it would not be easy for the experts who were monitoring the spiritual spring to notice it as long as he did not make too much noise. The chaotic aura was just enough to help Chu Fengmian practice his swordsmanship. The sky-devouring divine python slowly opened its mouth and devoured the spiritual energy of the spiritual spring. On the other side, Chu Fengmian sat in the courtyard. He could feel that a steady stream of spiritual energy had begun to enter his body. The chaotic aura made Chu Fengmian feel refreshed. He observed the 9 regions swordsmanship again and found several shortcomings. Swordsmanship practice. 9 figures condensed in front of Chu Fengmian. These 9 figures were practicing the 9 regions swordsmanship over and over again. There would be a slight difference in each practice. Gradually, it began to be perfected and made up for each of its shortcomings. Boom! Boom! Gusts of wind constantly blew in the courtyard. This was the fluctuation of spiritual energy that appeared when Chu Fengmian was practicing his swordsmanship. The cracks on the ancient book in front of Chu Fengmian began to be repaired. This represented the continuous improvement of the 9 regions swordsmanship. This was a chaotic aura that could be used to practice swordsmanship. The chaotic aura was extremely rare. It could only be found in some spiritual springs. This time, Chu Fengmian found the chaotic aura by accident. In this case, Chu Fengmian would not be polite. The sky-devouring divine python was paying attention to the experts in the underground spiritual spring to prevent those experts from discovering it. As long as Chu Fengmian had enough primal chaos aura, his 9 regions swordsmanship would reach perfection temporarily and reach the limit of his current realm. After a full day. In the courtyard, the 9 figures to Chu Fengmian divine python, Chu Fengmian. They couldn't sense any powerful sword domain from Chu Fengmian's body, but when they looked at Chu Fengmian's eyes, just his gaze alone was extremely sharp. His sword will was completely hidden, making it impossible for Chu Fengmian to sense any sword will. It was even impossible to recognize Chu Fengmian's identity as a swordsman. This was the state in which the 9 realms sword art was beginning to converge. As the 9 realms sword art continued to be perfected, his sword intent also gradually converged. Such a 9 realms sword technique was even more terrifying. If Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship were to suddenly erupt, the 9 realms sword technique would be even more terrifying. Not to mention an emperor, even if a half-step supreme great ancestor came, it would be extremely troublesome. There are still 3 days until the 9 regions genius battle. Since I've already finished practicing the 9 regions sword technique, I might as well use this time to take a closer look at the spirit spring and see what's inside. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. Chu Fengmian's consciousness entered the heaven-devouring divine python's territory once again after dispersing the ancient book of the 9-region sword technique. Gradually, they sneaked into the spirit spring. The primal chaos chi that Chu Fengmian devoured was nothing compared to the primal chaos chi in the spirit spring. As far as the eye could see, the entire spirit spring was still in chaos. Chu Fengmian pushed his spiritual sense to the extreme and barely managed to peel away the chaos in front of him. He began to constantly search. I don't believe that there's no end to the spirit spring. The heaven-devouring divine python formed by Chu Fengmian's sword intent kept moving through the spirit spring. Chu Fengmian wanted to figure out just how big this spirit spring was. However, even after several hours, Chu Fengmian still hadn't found the end. It was as if this spirit spring was infinitely huge, with no end in sight. It was many times bigger than what Chu Fengmian had imagined. Another 6 hours passed. Chu Fengmian's heaven-devouring divine python had been exploring the spirit spring for 12 hours. Just as Chu Fengmian was about to give up, Chu Fengmian suddenly felt that the primal chaos chi in the surroundings seemed to have thinned out a lot. Now that the heaven-devouring divine python was close to the heart of the spirit spring, the primal chaos chi should be denser. But now, it had become much thinner. Chu Fengmian also felt that the primal chaos chi seemed to be directly absorbed by a force. It seems that something is devouring the primal chaos chi. Seeing this change, Chu Fengmian suddenly became alert. In the spirit spring, Chu Fengmian hadn't found anything. Now, there was finally some abnormality. How could Chu Fengmian not be excited? Is there an expert cultivating in the spirit spring? Or is there something hidden in the spirit spring? Chu Fengmian thought secretly. At the same time, the heaven-devouring divine python's speed gradually slowed down and began to hide in the spirit spring. After all, the heaven-devouring divine python was formed by sword intent. Once it really hid, even some supreme ancestors couldn't easily detect it. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's heart was already prepared to encounter an accident. Once he encountered an expert of the spirit spring, Chu Fengmian would directly disperse the heaven-devouring divine python, so as not to attract trouble. Chapter 946. The divine sky-devouring python followed the flow of the chaotic aura all the way to the core of the spiritual spring. Chu Fengmian felt that this should be the heart of the spiritual spring. However, the chaotic aura that should have been gathered was completely devoured by this force. Boom! All of a sudden, the power appeared once again and sucked everything in the surroundings into it. Even the divine sky-devouring python formed by Chu Fengmian's sword was pulled in by this force along with the surrounding spiritual energy and chaotic aura. This sudden change was simply beyond Chu Fengmian's expectation. Moreover, this force was too terrifying. The divine sky-devouring python was directly sucked into the deepest part of the spiritual spring until it suddenly hit a hard object and stopped. Chu Fengmian finally felt relieved when he felt that the divine sky-devouring python was not swallowed by this force. He had used countless methods to sneak the divine sky-devouring python into the spiritual spring. This time, Chu Fengmian was able to sneak into the spiritual spring without the surveillance of the sky-reaching tower's experts. However, it would be hard to say the next time. Chu Fengmian slowly breathed a sigh of relief and then looked around. Now, the divine sky-devouring python seemed to have been pulled into a very special area. In this humiliation, there was no spiritual energy or chaotic aura. No, it was not that there was nothing. It was just that any chaotic aura that appeared would be directly devoured by this hard object beside Chu Fengmian. What is this? Chu Fengmian looked at this hard object. It was about 1 meter tall ellipsoid. Chu Fengmian could feel a trace of vitality from it. An egg? This is an egg? Chu Fengmian observed for a while. He felt that this thing was most similar to the egg of a creature. However, Chu Fengmian had never heard of any creature's egg that looked like this. This egg was entirely gray. Rather than gray, it was more accurate to say that it was the same color as chaotic aura. There was no difference between it and the surrounding chaotic aura. Chu Fengmian had read countless ancient books, but he had never heard of any creature's egg that looked like this. Moreover, this egg was still continuously devouring the chaotic aura. Chu Fengmian racked his brain, but he still could not figure out the true identity of this egg. Xing Xuan. Helpless, he could only awaken Xing Xian in his mind. Xian Xing came from outside the 9 realms, so his knowledge far surpassed Chu Fengmian's. Since Chu Fengmian didn't know about it, it was very likely that the egg came from outside the 9 realms. Chu Fengmian was no longer as unfamiliar with the world outside of the 9 realms as before. In the records of the 9 realms, the outer realm had always been a mysterious place. Most of the records about the outer realms were based on people's imaginations. It was only through Xing Xian's mouth that Chu Fengmian learned more about the outer realms. But now, Chu Fengmian clearly understood that the outer realms was an even larger world. The 9 domains were just one side of the endless world. What's going on? Xing Xian's voice sounded surprised in Chu Fengmian's mind. After following Chu Fengmian, he rarely had the chance to be awakened by Chu Fengmian. Generally speaking, even if he encountered trouble, Chu Fengmian would choose to think of a solution by himself. He had only awakened Xing Xian a few times. I found something strange. Can you help me take a look? Chu Fengmian didn't beat around the bush and said directly. With a move of his palm, a water screen condensed in front of him. The water screen showed the scene of the spirit spring. Oh? You actually found such a spirit spring? Xing Xian had already recognized Chu Fengmian as his master. Now, as long as Chu Fengmian was willing, Xing Xian could easily figure out what had just happened. But soon, his gaze focused on the strange egg. He confirmed it countless times with his eyes. Then, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide. An innate divine beast. This is an innate divine beast's egg. Xing Xian's voice was filled with surprise. An innate divine beast's egg? Even Chu Fengmian's expression was as surprised as Xing Xian's. An innate divine beast. This was an existence that was only recorded in some legendary places of the 9 realms. According to legend, when the heavens and earth were created, an innate divine beast was born from the primal chaos. They were called innate divine beasts. The current dragon clan, and even the ancient war dragon clan, had inherited some of the bloodline of the innate divine beast's ancestor, Jianwang. Some of the powerful demonic beast clans in the 9 realms had inherited some of the bloodline of the innate divine beasts. But they could only be called demonic beasts and ferocious beasts, not divine beasts. This was because only the first generation of beasts born from the primal chaos were qualified to be called innate divine beasts. Even their descendants were not qualified to be called innate divine beasts. An innate divine beast's egg could only be hatched from the primal chaos. Could it be that this is an innate divine beast that was born from the primal chaos and hasn't hatched? Chu Fengmian said in disbelief. An innate divine beast was something that had only appeared tens of thousands of years ago, or even more distant eras. Now, there was actually an innate divine beast's egg in the spirit spring. How could Chu Fengmian believe this? That should be the case. Xing Xian's words were also somewhat uncertain. Based on his judgment, the most he could determine was that this egg should be an innate divine beast's egg. However, he was also confused as to why this egg had appeared in the spirit spring. Even with his knowledge, he had never heard of such a ridiculous thing. An innate divine beast's egg had not hatched from the primal chaos, but had reappeared tens of thousands of years later. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could clearly feel that this egg still had vitality. This proved that this innate divine beast's egg was actually a living creature. An innate divine beast's egg is the most precious treasure in the world. Chu Fengmian's eyes were fixed on this innate divine beast's egg. Innate divine beasts were legendary existences that could destroy the world. Back when the primal chaos was shattered, these innate divine beasts had definitely contributed the most to the battle. Later on, when the primal chaos was shattered, all the innate divine beasts in the world had fallen. It could be said that if this innate divine beast's egg really hatched, it would be the only innate divine beast in the world. Chapter 947. What's the matter, kid? Do you want to tame the egg and make it recognize you as its master? Xing Xian suddenly said with a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Stop dreaming. An innate divine beast isn't something that can be tamed by humans. Innate divine beasts are born from chaos. It can be said that its bloodline is nobler than all living creatures. How can it be tamed? Xing Xian said Chu Fengmian's thoughts. The strength of an innate divine beast was reflected in countless legends. It could be said that even a 3-year-old child knew about it. It was impossible to say that Chu Fengmian wasn't tempted. Hearing Xing Xian's sarcasm, Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change. I can still give it a try. I'm afraid that no martial artist has ever tried to tame an innate divine beast. Chu Fengmian smiled. The opportunity is right in front of me. I can give it a try. The birth of innate divine beasts was even earlier than the birth of humans. Before humans created martial arts, innate divine beasts were already unhindered in the Desolation Era. In the Desolation Era, they were the overlords. Throughout history, no one had ever done such a crazy thing. It's a waste of effort. Xing Xian curled his lips. Is that so? Chu Fengmian said softly, as if he was replying to Xing Xian, but also as if he was talking to himself. If it was the Chu Fengmian of his previous life, he might also think that it was a waste of effort. However, this was something that had never happened to Chu Fengmian in his 2 lifetimes. Now, it was happening to Chu Fengmian. Therefore, in Chu Fengmian's opinion, there was nothing impossible. If something like rebirth could happen to Chu Fengmian, then other things were also possible. Chu Fengmian observed the innate divine beast egg for a while. A drop of golden blood slowly dripped from his fingertip. Following Chu Fengmian's mind, it was sent to the side of the godly devouring python and dripped onto the eggshell of the innate divine beast egg. The eggshell was a glossy gray color. When the drop of golden blood landed on the surface, it gradually fused with the egg. What's going on? Is there no reaction? Chu Fengmian's consciousness was attached to the sky-devouring divine python to observe the egg. A drop of Chu Fengmian's golden blood landed on the egg and was sucked into it. However, nothing happened. Failed? Chu Fengmian couldn't make up his mind. An innate divine beast egg was something that had never been heard of even in ancient legends. They were even things that should not have existed in time. These connate divine beast eggs were born in the era when the chaos was created. Before the end of the chaos era, these innate divine beast eggs should have hatched. Who would have thought that there would be one left behind, and it was a living egg? While it was true that the eggs of ordinary demonic beasts could be assimilated with the blood essence, this was a Xiantian god beast we were talking about. Xing Xian's words weren't wrong. The bloodline of an innate divine beast was innately noble. Whether or not he could subdue it, Chu Fengmian was only giving it a try. Even if it was a failure, it was something that Chu Fengmian had expected. Just as he was about to give up, there was a sudden change in the place where the innate divine beast egg was located. The power of the innate divine beast egg, which had been dormant all this time, began to rise crazily. At the same time, the speed at which the egg devoured the surrounding chaos aura and spiritual power suddenly increased by hundreds of times. The huge attraction force instantly sucked in all the spiritual energy in the spiritual spring. It could be said that the entire spiritual spring was now in a state of chaos. What's going on? Chu Fengmian was a little flustered when he saw this change. He came to the spirit spring secretly. If he caused too much of a commotion, it would be troublesome for Chu Fengmian. Fortunately, the egg was located in the deepest part of the spirit spring. Although the commotion had spread out, the experts outside wouldn't notice it for a while. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's heart was filled with anticipation. The sudden change in the innate divine beast egg, which had been dormant all this time, was definitely unusual. It seemed that the drop of blood essence that Chu Fengmian had just dripped into the egg was not in vain. Is this possible? Xing Xian, who saw the scene in his mind, was speechless. He could naturally see that the change in the innate divine beast egg was definitely caused by the drop of blood essence that Chu Fengmian had dripped. Could it be that this brat is really a lucky cat that hit a dead mouse? Xing Xian said in disbelief. The innate divine beast egg was something that had never appeared in the legendary city. If it was really subdued, it would not only shock the 9 regions, but also any corner of the world. Subduing an innate divine beast with human strength was something that had never been described in the legendary city. While Chu Fengmian and Xing Xian were in shock. The egg of the innate divine beast had undergone another transformation. Countless arrays suddenly appeared from his eggshell. These arrays appeared in the air and turned into a huge vortex. The vortex expanded countless times and began to madly absorb the surrounding spiritual power. Almost in an instant, the spiritual power that was enough to devour hundreds of billions of spiritual stones was still expanding. In these few seconds, it could be said that the spiritual spring in the Beimang Academy was sucked dry. The spiritual spring in the Beimang Academy was enough to support the cultivation of countless disciples for tens of thousands of years. But in front of the innate divine beast egg, it would be sucked dry in a few seconds. How terrifying! Isn't the innate divine beast afraid of being stuffed to death after absorbing so much spiritual power? Chu Fengmian said with a dumbfounded expression. So much spiritual power was simply unimaginable. It could be said that if Chu Fengmian were to devour it, even if the spiritual power he needed was thousands or tens of thousands of times more than that of a martial artist, he would only be stuffed to death and explode. Compared to the innate divine beast egg, his battle dragon skill was not considered a big eater. This innate divine beast egg was. It's nothing for an innate divine beast to absorb such a little spiritual power. In the chaotic era, the chaotic aura was everywhere. How could it be so thin now that it's enough for an innate divine beast to be born? Chapter 948. Xing Xian said excitedly as he watched the transformation of the innate divine beast egg. I suspect that this innate divine beast egg didn't hatch because it didn't absorb enough chaotic aura in the chaotic era due to various changes. It's now hiding in the spiritual spring and constantly devouring the chaotic aura. It's about to reach a critical point. Your blood essence stimulated it and it should hatch soon. No one in the capital of 9 domains had ever been able to witness the hatching of an innate divine beast. Xing Xian was also very excited. It was rare for him to be so concerned about something. The divine sky-devouring python stayed quietly around the innate divine beast egg. The devouring vortex seemed to be only devouring the spiritual energy and chaotic aura in the spiritual spring. As for the divine sky-devouring python, the innate divine beast egg didn't seem to be interested in it at all. The devouring process lasted for a full minute. Chu Fengmian could feel that a large piece of empty space had been devoured in the huge spiritual spring. At least 1/3 of the spiritual spring had been devoured by the innate divine beast egg all of a sudden. Could it be that the spiritual spring has been completely devoured by the innate divine beast egg? Chu Fengmian looked at all this with his mouth wide open. He didn't know what to say. He was amazed. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have thought that there would be something that could devour spiritual energy in such a way. Could it be the egg of the divine sky-devouring beast? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but think. Among the innate divine beasts, there was a divine sky-devouring beast that was said to have the ability to devour the heavens. It could devour heaven and earth and everything. The divine sky-devouring python formed by Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was actually a descendant of the divine sky-devouring beast and had inherited its devouring ability. It shouldn't be. Xing Xian thought for a moment and shook his head. The innate divine beasts in history didn't have the same kind. Each of them was a unique individual. Therefore, this egg shouldn't be the divine sky-devouring beast egg. Since the innate divine beast has the power to destroy heaven and earth, it should be normal for it to devour more spiritual energy. When he said this, Xing Xian even felt a little lacking in confidence. Indeed, it was true that it had devoured more spiritual energy. However, it devouring 1/3 of the spiritual spring was a little too terrifying. This spirit spring was the largest spirit spring in the 9 regions. It could be said that the spirit springs of any of the 7 great sects were not even 1/3 as large as this one. This meant that the divine sky-devouring beast egg was enough to suck the spiritual spring of one of the 7 sects. Chu Fengmian didn't even dare to think about how much spiritual energy it had devoured. Chu Fengmian even suspected that the egg would suck the entire spiritual spring dry. After a while, the divine sky-devouring divine beast egg, and the divine sky-devouring beast egg. However, by now, half of the spiritual spring's spiritual energy had been devoured by the innate divine beast egg. In the midst of the silence, a clear voice could be heard all of a sudden. Although it was insignificant, in Chu Fengmian's eyes, there was no excitement. The divine sky-devouring beast egg was finally going to hatch. Chu Fengmian's expression was one of extreme caution. Even a newborn baby of an innate divine beast would possess such terrifying power. Once it attacked Chu Fengmian, it would have to withdraw its consciousness from the sky-devouring divine python. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome for Chu Fengmian's consciousness. Crack! The crisp shattering sounds gradually increased in number. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the divine sky-devouring beast egg. More and more cracks appeared. At the same time, Chu Fengmian could feel that a small life had suddenly awakened in the egg. Be careful. Xing Xian gave a rare warning. Even if it was a newly hatched divine beast, it was still the most terrifying existence in the world. Chu Fengmian nodded. He naturally knew this. That was why the sky-devouring divine python didn't approach the egg. Instead, it observed the changes in the egg from afar. Crack! At the last cracking sound, the cracks on the surface of the divine sky-devouring beast egg were all connected. Then, it suddenly shattered in the air. The moment the eggshell broke, all of the eggshells suddenly disappeared from the void. Seeing this, Chu Fengmian felt a little heartache. Anything related to the divine sky-devouring beast was invaluable. Originally, Chu Fengmian wanted to collect these eggshells. These eggshells were simply much harder than any of the spirit tools he had ever seen. If he could refine a spiritual weapon, it would definitely be a protective spiritual weapon not inferior to the Kanglin immortal armor. Now, all of them were shattered. But soon, Chu Fengmian didn't think about it anymore. His real goal was the divine sky-devouring beast. Chu Fengmian's gaze followed the broken eggshell. Suddenly, his eyes showed some surprise. At the place where the eggshell was, something about half a meter tall was standing there. From afar, this thing had a body of pure white long fur. It looked somewhat similar to a cat, but it was much rounder. At a glance, it was round and plump. What is this thing? Chu Fengmian looked at the round creature in front of him. It was simply beyond his imagination. Chu Fengmian had imagined countless times what this divine sky-devouring beast egg could hatch into. Ancestor Jianwang, divine flame Qilin, and sky-devouring beast. Each of them were famous in extremely terrifying existences in ancient times. However, this round creature in front of him was completely different from the divine sky-devouring beast in Chu Fengmian's mind. Xing Xian, what kind of divine sky-devouring beast is this? Chu Fengmian thought for a while, but couldn't think of anything similar to this round creature in front of him. I don't know. Divine sky-devouring beasts are all independent existences. This one is obviously different from any other divine sky-devouring beast, Xing Xian replied. Although his voice sounded calm, he wasn't any better than Chu Fengmian. He was just as surprised as Chu Fengmian. And divine sky-devouring beast, at least in appearance, was an existence without dignity. Chapter 949. In the Land of Spiritual Spring. While Chu Fengmian was observing the round creature also noticed Chu Fengmian's presence. The moment it looked over, Chu Fengmian felt a chill from the bottom of his heart. Terrifying. When it looked at Chu Fengmian, it was as if Chu Fengmian was going to be killed. Even though the creature's appearance was strange, it was still an innate divine beast, the most terrifying existence in the world. Just when Chu Fengmian was about to give up on the divine sky-devouring python and withdraw his consciousness, the hostility suddenly disappeared. Then, the round innate divine beast ran directly in the direction of the divine sky-devouring python. In the land of spiritual spring, everyone could only fly. However, the round innate divine beast ran over with a hop. Chu Fengmian couldn't even tell if the round innate divine beast used its power. 9. From his chest, he could still vaguely say something. 9? Chu Fengmian obviously couldn't understand what the innate divine beast was saying. Is this guy really an innate divine beast? Aren't the legendary innate divine beasts able to speak human language? Chu Fengmian asked suspiciously. He had been doubting Xing Xian's judgment more than once. But no matter what, the strength of this little guy must be extremely terrifying. Although Chu Fengmian couldn't feel the strength of this little guy, Chu Fengmian felt fear from the bottom of his heart when he was targeted by the hostility just now. He had to bear a great pressure in an instant. Even if 10 Supreme Ancestors joined forces, they wouldn't be able to give Chu Fengmian such a great pressure. Xing Xian observed and said slowly. This little guy has just hatched. According to humans, it's just a baby. Of course, it can't speak human language. Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian nodded secretly. Indeed, this little guy had just hatched. It could be said that the most terrifying thing was that it had such a terrifying strength when it was just hatched. 9. The round innate divine beast ran over and hugged the divine sky-devouring python. It was still saying something vaguely. This little guy, before Chu Fengmian finished his words, his eyes suddenly changed. Vaguely, Chu Fengmian felt that there were several extremely terrifying auras coming directly to the land of spiritual spring. It seemed that the earth-shaking changes in the land of spiritual spring couldn't be hidden from the experts of Sky-Reaching Tower. The owner of each of these auras was many times stronger than Chu Fengmian. They were all old ancestors of the immortal realm. Let's go! Go! Chu Fengmian looked at the round connate sacred beast and said anxiously. Come with me. Now, he didn't care if the innate divine beast could understand him or not. Although Chu Fengmian was unable to make him recognize him as his master, he would definitely be of great help if he continued to follow Chu Fengmian. To the was to take it. It was to the ofs. Was. S. 9. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the innate divine beast was a little confused. However, it still turned into a ray of light and went into the divine sky-devouring python. The innate divine beast was indeed the darling of heaven and earth. Even a newborn innate divine beast could understand Chu Fengmian's words. Let's go! Chu Fengmian's divine sky-devouring python disappeared quietly. Less than half a minute after the divine sky-devouring python disappeared, 3 figures came to the place where the innate divine beast egg was. However, the land of spiritual spring had undergone earth-shaking changes. Looking at the changes in the spiritual spring, the expressions of the 3 figures were all filled with shock. That mysterious egg actually disappeared? What happened? How could there be such a big movement? Half of the spiritual energy in the land of spiritual spring has disappeared. Could it be that someone sneaked into the land of spiritual spring and took the egg away? None of the 3 figures were able to figure out what was going on. What exactly happened in the land of spiritual spring? In just a few minutes, the land of spiritual spring had undergone a great change by the time they reacted. Half of the spiritual energy in the land of spiritual spring had disappeared completely. It shouldn't be that someone sneaked in. The land of spiritual spring was set up by us. No one from the 9 domains could sneak in without a sound. One of the figures, a white-haired elder, said slowly. Furthermore, that mysterious egg is most definitely not something that can be subdued and taken away by humans. Anyone who touches it will be met with a calamity. At this point, the white-haired elder couldn't help but shake his head. When they first discovered this mysterious egg, they also had the thought of capturing it. However, they were met with a calamity. A supreme ancestor died on the spot. Since then, no one dared to have any ideas about the egg. Does that mean that the egg suddenly disappeared on its own? Another eagle-faced man beside the white-haired old man said with a cold look in his eyes. It's just an egg. Can it spread its legs and run away? If an egg can't run away, what if it hatches? Hearing the eagle-nosed man's words, the last figure beside him, a middle-aged lady, said coldly, "That egg has always been alive." Moreover, the spiritual energy in the surroundings was suddenly devoured. It's very likely that the egg hatched and the creature inside it ran away. Hatched? Then let's find it quickly. The egg is so powerful. The creature inside it is very likely to be an extremely powerful ancient beast. Hearing the beautiful lady's words, the eagle-nosed man said hurriedly, "By Feng, you should grow some brains. We can't even deal with the egg. Is the creature inside it something we can deal with?" The middle-aged lady said disdainfully. "You!" Hearing the sarcasm, the eagle-nosed man called by Feng was furious. "Don't argue anymore. Let's report this matter to the elders first." The white-haired old man's words stopped the fight. "We are here to guard the land of spiritual spring and the egg. Now that the egg has disappeared, let's report it to the pavilion master." "That's right. Stop arguing." The middle-aged lady sneered. "Then let's go." Chapter 950. I've really earned a lot this time. After devouring countless chaotic auras, my 9-realm swordsmanship has reached a perfect level. Returning to the courtyard, Chu Fengmian sat on the stone bench, feeling carefree. He had really earned a lot by choosing to live in the sky-reaching tower this time. Chu Fengmian sneaked into the spiritual spring and devoured the chaotic aura there. His 9-realm swordsmanship had reached the most perfect level of its current realm. Although there was no change in Chu Fengmian's realm, Chu Fengmian's true combat strength had increased tremendously. If Chu Fengmian broke through to the Destiny realm and became an emperor in the future, Chu Fengmian might even have the power to fight against Ancestor Wu. Of course, all of this was not Chu Fengmian's greatest opportunity. His greatest opportunity this time was the innate divine beast. By the way, where did the little guy go? Just now, Chu Fengmian saw the little guy turn into a stream of light and enter the sky-devouring divine python. However, now that Chu Fengmian returned to the courtyard, there was no trace of the little guy. Chu Fengmian spent a lot of effort to bring the innate divine beast out of the spiritual spring. If it disappeared, it would be troublesome. Chu Fengmian hurriedly activated his spiritual power to explore every corner of the courtyard. This courtyard was not big. Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense quickly scanned it, but he did not find the trace of the innate divine beast. "It's not here?" Chu Fengmian's eyes were a little surprised. He just felt that the innate divine beast should have followed Chu Fengmian and left the spiritual spring. But now, it was not in the courtyard. Thinking of this, Chu Fengmian hurriedly activated his spiritual sense to explore the little guy's body. Then, Chu Fengmian's face revealed an indescribable strange feeling. On Chu Fengmian's body, on the crown of the divine tree, the little guy was lying on the crown of the tree. He even remodeled the crown of the tree, making it look like he was building a nest. Clearly, he was treating the sacred tree as his nest. Oh! This little guy should have sensed the aura of the divine tree, which is of the same origin as it, so it ran to the divine tree. Xing Xian suddenly said, "The tree of God and the Khanate divine beasts are the earliest life forms born from the chaos of heaven and earth. They can be said to be of the same origin. It's normal for this little guy to be close to the tree of God. This little guy really knows how to enjoy himself." Chu Fengmian looked at the divine tree and couldn't help but smile. This little guy first connected a few branches of the tree of God together to build a frame. Then, he spread the leaves of the tree of God on the ground to make a soft bed. He was lying there quietly, as if he was resting. "Little fellow?" Chu Fengmian called out softly. This Khanate divine beast must have understood Chu Fengmian's words, so Chu Fengmian began to converse with him. Hearing Chu Fengmian's voice, the innate sacred beast glanced at Chu Fengmian and mumbled, "9. 9. This caused Chu Fengmian to feel somewhat helpless. This little fellow was able to understand his words. Unfortunately, Chu Fengmian was unable to understand his words. "Forget it. Since you like this tree of God, you can rest here." "Oh right, you don't have a name yet, right? Since you're called 9. 9, then I'll call you Lil 9. Chu Fengmian looked at Lil 9 and said calmly. This little fellow seemed to be quite satisfied with the name Lil 9. After Chu Fengmian called it 9 a few more times, it returned to the tree of God and closed its eyes to sleep. It actually fell asleep. This little fellow's current strength should be around that of a ruler. It should be stronger than most rulers, but it shouldn't be a match for great ancestor Wu. Chu Fengmian looked at the sleeping Lil 9 and thought to himself. A newly born Khanate divine beast actually possessed strength comparable to that of a ruler. This was already extremely shocking. One had to know that most people or demonic beasts would never reach the level of a ruler in their entire lives. Only tens of millions of people could possibly give birth to a ruler. This kind of Khanate divine beast would stand at the peak of the 9 regions as soon as it made its move. Moreover, as it grew up in the future, it would also grow bit by bit. At that time, it was very likely that it would be much more terrifying than anyone in the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian took a few glances and left with his spiritual sense. He sat on the spot and continued to comprehend the sword technique. Another 2 days passed. Chu Fengmian's eyes slowly opened. In these 4 days, Chu Fengmian used the aura of chaos to practice his sword technique. It could be said that the effect of 40 years of bitter cultivation was much more useful. If there's an ancient spiritual spring, I can use the aura of chaos to practice my sword technique anytime and anywhere. Chu Fengmian could not help but sigh. The aura of chaos was really one of the most divine things in the world. With the aura of chaos, Chu Fengmian's practice of swordsmanship would be thousands of times faster. However, there were very few spiritual springs with the aura of chaos in the 9 regions, and they were tightly controlled by the major forces of the 9 regions. It was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to obtain it alone. After the transformation of the spiritual spring in Sky-Reaching Tower, it would be almost impossible to sneak in again. However, there would be a day when Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to reach the peak of the 9 regions. At that time, he would come for the spiritual spring again. Senior, the ancient fighting arena is about to open. Just as Chu Fengmian got up, a voice came from outside the courtyard. It seemed that the young attendant of Sky-Reaching Tower had come to call Chu Fengmian. Yes. Chu Fengmian got up and walked out of the courtyard in a single step. In Sky-Reaching Tower, Gu Jin was already standing outside, waiting for Chu Fengmian. At the same time, Chu Fengmian saw that Gu Jin's aura had undergone earth-shattering changes in the past 4 days. Her cultivation had been forcibly broken by Chu Fengmian, and her foundation was unstable. Using the aura of chaos was enough to stabilize her foundation. Although there was no change in Gu Jin's cultivation, her strength was at least twice as strong as it was 4 days ago. Facing an ordinary unblemished realm expert at the 4th step of the life and death steps, as long as he did not encounter the geniuses of the 7 major sects, he would have a great chance of winning. Chapter 951. You've stabilized your cultivation. What you lack now is combat. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament is the best training for you. Chu Fengmian looked at Gu Jin and smiled. Gu Jin's talent wasn't considered weak, but she couldn't be compared to the true geniuses of the 7 sections. However, after being nurtured by Chu Fengmian, Gu Jin wasn't inferior to the ordinary geniuses of the 7 sections. However, what she lacked was combat experience. It was meaningless to have strength but not know how to fight. Yes. Gu Jin nodded. She was extremely grateful to Chu Fengmian. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian, she wouldn't have been able to reach her current level of strength. Not to mention, she was now on equal footing with the disciples of the 7 sections. Let's go. Chu Fengmian saw them. In many of the surrounding rooms, the cultivators who were cultivating there had left one after another. Most of the cultivators in Skypiercer Tower were here to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. At a glance, Chu Fengmian saw many experts. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament, the biggest event for the younger generation of the 9 regions, is finally about to begin. Chu Fengmian's eyes shone with excitement. Chu Fengmian had heard about the 9 Regions Genius Tournament for a long time. He was very excited to be able to participate in it himself. Furthermore, this time, it seemed to be more prosperous than any of the previous ones. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jing left Skypiercer Tower and headed straight for the heart of Martial Imperial City. After leaving the Heavenly Tower, the streets of the Martial Imperial City were filled with people. The number of cultivators who came to participate in or watch the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was in the tens of millions every year. All of the cultivators were heading in the same direction. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jing were among the crowd. They walked slowly and arrived at the heart of Martial Imperial City in a short while. There was a huge teleportation array at the center of this place. Countless cultivators had disappeared from the teleportation array. About an hour later, Chu Fengmian and Gu Jing finally arrived in front of the transportation array. They gathered their spiritual energy and poured it into the array. Immediately, their figures disappeared from Martial Imperial City. When they opened their eyes again, they were already in a completely different place. A desert. As far as the eye could see, there was only an endless desert nearby. In front of Chu Fengmian was a huge arena in the middle of the desert. The ancient era's battle arena was huge and could accommodate millions of spectators at once. It could be said that some cities were much larger. In the middle of the ancient fighting arena, there was a huge arena. Looking from the outside, it was at least a few hundred miles wide. Chu Fengmian knew that the arena of the ancient era's battle arena was not as small as it appeared from the outside. A few hundred kilometers in length and width might be enough for some weaker martial artists. The 9 Regions Geniuses competition was an event left behind from the ancient era. It could be said that back then, there had been countless geniuses. Every time the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was held, some immortal realm old ancestors would participate in it. According to the rules of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, as long as one was under 100 years old, one could participate regardless of one's cultivation level. As long as they were of age, even if they were a supreme ancestor, they could participate. Of course, in the current era, it had been tens of thousands of years since a genius of this level had appeared. However, every time, there would be some geniuses who had reached the destiny realm and became emperors. A battle between emperors could cause the sky to fall and the earth to crack with a wave of their hands. An area of 1,000,000 miles could be destroyed for them. Therefore, there was another world inside the arena. It was thousands or tens of thousands of times larger than what it looked like from the outside. No matter what level a martial artist was at, they could fight to their heart's content. There are still empty seats over there. Let's go over. Chu Fengmian looked over and saw that there were still some empty seats. Now, most of the seats in the ancient era's battle arena were already full. Chu Fengmian and Gu Jing sat a little closer to the outer circle. At a glance, they were inconspicuous. In the ancient era's battle arena, the most central seats were basically the peerless geniuses of the 7 great sections. Oh? There are actually so many young emperors? Chu Fengmian saw that there were at least a dozen young emperors sitting below. They were all under the age of 100. These people were all geniuses that the 7 great sects had tried their best to nurture. They were monstrous geniuses and had the possibility of becoming supreme great ancestors in the future. It seemed that the foundation of the 7 great sects was not as weak as Chu Fengmian had imagined. They indeed had some strength. However, Chu Fengmian thought in the blink of an eye. For example, the 6 demonic sects had been quiet for tens of thousands of years. This time, the 6 supremacies who appeared were all emperors. Otherwise, they were also figures whose strength was comparable to emperors. They were also less than 100 years old. Especially the Devil Emperor, he was a genius among geniuses. He was similar to Chu Fengmian. In fact, when they fought back then, he even suppressed Chu Fengmian. The 6 demonic sects that had been quiet for 10,000 years were already like this, let alone the 7 great sects at their peak. These emperors present might not be the strongest batch of geniuses from the 7 great sections. At least, some of the people that Chu Fengmian had heard of were not here yet. Whoosh! In the distance, a dazzling sword light suddenly flashed. This sword light was as fast as lightning, so no one could see it clearly. In an instant, it fell into the ancient era's battle arena. When the sword light dissipated, the surrounding martial artists slowly saw that the sword light was actually a young man. The escape light was like a sword light. This escape light was so fast that people could not see it clearly. It's Jianwang, the super genius of the Tianjin sect. Jianwang, even Jianwang is here. Is he going to participate this year? Hasn't he not come to participate in the past 2 years? Why is he suddenly here? Seeing the young man's figure, countless martial artists in the surroundings cried out in surprise. Jianwang? What an arrogant name. Chu Fengmian's gaze also fell on Jianwang. The sword intent on his body was extremely sharp. It could be said that the sword intent on the bodies of many great ancestors of the sword cultivation level that Chu Fengmian had seen was much more terrifying. Jianwang had cultivated an extremely sharp sword intent. At least in terms of swordsmanship, this Jianwang had gone very far. It seemed that the Tianjin sect was not as simple as it seemed. The real genius just did not usually appear. Gu Jin, who is this Jianwang? Chapter 952. Jianwang. The name sounded arrogant and domineering, but Chu Fengmian knew it well. Behind this name, there was an even deeper origin. Unsurprisingly, the sword-slaying immortal had also come to participate in the Nine Realms Genius Battle. Chu Fengmian would never underestimate any opponent. Moreover, the sword immortal before him was enough to make Chu Fengmian take him seriously. Gu Jin recovered from her shock when she heard Chu Fengmian calling out to Jianwang. It seemed that even she was extremely shocked by the appearance of the celestial slaying sword. After calming herself down, she explained. Jianwang is a rare genius in the Tianjin sect. He joined the Tianjin sect when he was young and won the first place on the list of top 100 talents when he was 15. He entered the Destiny realm when he was 40 and became an emperor. He even won the 7th place in the 9 regions genius battle. He didn't participate in the next 2 competitions. It's said that he's now the top disciple in the Tianjin sect and is being groomed to be the next sect master of the Tianjin sect. I didn't expect him to be here this time. Jianwang hadn't participated in the 9 regions genius battle for the past 2 years. Chu Fengmian didn't expect him to show up every time. He inherited the title of Immortal Slayer at such a young age. It seems that this guy is indeed a sword genius. Chu Fengmian thought to himself after hearing Gu Jin's words. Becoming an emperor at the age of 40 was an incredible speed. For martial artists, those who could surpass life and death and become patriarchs before the age of 100 were considered geniuses. As for becoming an emperor, they were even more geniuses. Jianwang did all this at the age of 40. 20 years had passed. Jianwang's realm hadn't changed, but his strength had become much more terrifying. Even such a genius has appeared. It seems that there's something hidden behind the 9 regions genius battle. Chu Fengmian had a guess when he heard from Luo Shi that the Demon Emperor would also participate in the 9 regions genius battle. This time, the 9 regions genius battle would definitely be different from the past. Jianwang's appearance made Chu Fengmian even more convinced of his previous conjecture. Senior brother Immortal Slaying, your appearance this time has caused quite a stir. Sitting next to Jianwang, several disciples of the Tianjin sect were laughing and chatting, discussing everyone's surprise. Jianwang hadn't appeared in 20 years. Originally, everyone thought that he had lost interest in the 9 regions genius battle. It's just a boring discussion. My goal is to win the championship. Sword-slaying Immortal's gaze was cold. His eyes were as sharp as swords. It was as if he didn't care about anything other than the sword Dao. With senior brother Immortal Slaying taking the field, the championship will definitely belong to you this time. Several Tianjin sect disciples beside him hurriedly tried to flatter him. The discussion about Jianwang's appearance in the ancient fighting ground had yet to fade away. From afar, another figure flew over. No, it was more accurate to say that the figure walked over. It was another young man. He walked in the air as if he were walking on flat ground. Waves of spiritual power condensed under his feet to form a unique path. Wherever he went, the path would extend to wherever he went. Huang Wu. It's him? He's here too. What's going on? Why did the 9 regions genius battle attract so many monstrous geniuses? Huang Wu's appearance shocked the surrounding cultivators. It was no less shocking than Jian Zhanxian's appearance. Huang Wu is the young master of the desolate ancient sect. His status is much more precious than most of the patriarchs. He hasn't participated in the 9 regions genius battle for 3 consecutive years. Why is he here this time? Gu Jin asked in surprise beside Chu Fengmian. More and more unexpected characters were arriving. Sword Immortal Slayer, Desolate, these were all characters who had been famous for a long time. Although they weren't even 100 years old, they were still qualified to participate in the 9 regions genius battle. However, they had all obtained decent rankings in the 9 regions geniuses battle. They had already obtained extremely high statuses. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have taken the 9 regions genius battle seriously. However, they were all here this time. When Sword Immortal saw Desolate Void, he raised his head and glanced at him. There was no surprise in his eyes, only battle intent. Interesting. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. If the 9 regions genius battle was as calm as before, it wouldn't be interesting. These hidden experts had all appeared. This was the true 9 regions geniuses battle. What's going on? Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, why are they here? Many of the spectating warriors in the ancient fighting ring felt that something was amiss. If Jian Zhanxian had appeared alone, it could be that he was bored and came to participate. This could be considered a reason. However, even Huang Wu had appeared. This was unusual. Moreover, not everyone had arrived yet. There were still some empty seats in the seats of the 7 great sections. This proved that there were still people who hadn't arrived. Brother Zhanxian, Brother Huang Wu, you're early. A loud and small voice suddenly rang out in the air, and another figure appeared. Compared to Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu, this person seemed much calmer. However, when they saw the purple light enveloping him, no one dared to underestimate him. Gongsun Qianjue. That fierce person is here too. The moment Gongsun Qianjue landed, everyone present could feel a ferocious aura. It was as if they were being stared at by a hungry wolf. This is the divine body of Heaven's End? Chu Fengmian sized up Gongsun Qianjue. He also felt as if he was being stared at by a lone wolf. The divine body of Heaven's End was ranked 8th among the top 10 innate divine bodies. It was one of the most terrifying innate divine bodies. Chu Fengmian had killed Yi Tianjun, the holy son of Beimang Academy. He had the chaos divine body, which was also a terrifying constitution. However, it was only ranked 10th among the innate divine bodies. It barely squeezed into the top 10. The divine body of Heaven's End was ranked 8th. It was even stronger than the chaos divine body. The stronger a cultivator with an innate divine body was, the more terrifying the innate divine body's power would be. Gongsun Qianjue had already stepped into the heavenly mandate realm. As an emperor, he could use his divine body of Heaven's End freely. Chapter 953. After the appearance of 3 monstrous geniuses, the crowd's reaction was no longer as intense as before. Some of the more observant ones could already tell that this year's 9 regions genius tournament was extraordinary. Gongsun Qianjue wouldn't be the last. As expected, not long after, a few more figures appeared one after another. A young man in a long robe descended from the sky. At a glance, this young man didn't look like a martial artist, but more like an alchemist. Beside him, Gu Jin had already told Chu Fengmian the young man's identity. Yao Zhe, the young master of medicine King Valley. Like Jian Zhanxian, Huang Wu, and Gongsun Qianjue, they were all geniuses of their generation, the cream of the crop. Next, those from Sage Monarch Sect, Alpha Hall, and Nine Demon City should be arriving. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. Before he could finish his sentence, another 3 figures descended from the sky. The tallest of them was Wu Hongtian from Sage Monarch Sect. His muscles bulged, and he was a typical disciple of Sage Monarch Sect. Beside Wu Hongtian was a young woman. This caused Chu Fengmian to be surprised. The strongest of this generation of Alpha Hall was a woman. She wore a robe made of stars, which made her look mysterious. Alpha Hall had always been a symbol of mystery. It was the mysterious path of astronomical phenomena. Even Chu Fengmian didn't know much about Alpha Hall. However, no one dared to question the strength of Alpha Hall. Alpha Hall's Xing Xianqing is said to be the most beautiful woman in the 9 regions. Gu Jin, who was sitting beside Chu Fengmian, suddenly said with a smile. I wonder if you're interested in her. The most beautiful woman in the 9 regions? Chu Fengmian smiled when he heard this. He didn't know how much this title had to do with Xing Xuanqing's identity. After all, she was the only woman in the younger generation. However, Gu Jin's words made Chu Fengmian feel a little better. To be called the most beautiful woman in the 9 regions, what did Xing Xianqing look like? Quietly, Chu Fengmian activated his spiritual consciousness and approached Xing Xianqing, wanting to see her true appearance behind her robe. However, Chu Fengmian's spiritual consciousness was devoured by her robe. Even with Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense, he couldn't see through Xing Xuanqing's robe. You have some skills. Chu Fengmian tried several times, but to no avail. Only then did he slowly withdraw his spirit sense. The techniques of Dubhe Hall indeed had some tricks up their sleeves. Even Chu Fengmian's spiritual sense couldn't see through them. If there was a chance in the future, Chu Fengmian really wanted to see Xing Xuanqing's true face. As long as Chu Fengmian fought with her, there might be a chance. Chu Fengmian didn't want to stir up trouble with so many people around. His gaze once again landed on the last figure. The last person was a genius from the 9 Demon City. He was a man in a black robe. Although his face could not be seen clearly, he was surrounded by a terrifying demonic aura. This demonic will caused many warriors to frown. Although 9 Demon City was one of the 7 great sects, most of the cultivators who cultivated demonic arts stayed in 9 Demon City and avoided it. Mo Skysplitter, it really is him. The Demon Emperor rebelled and left. He's the only one in 9 Demon City who can take on this responsibility. The most outstanding person among the younger generation in 9 Demon City wasn't Mo Skysplitter, but the Demon Emperor. However, everyone in the 9 regions knew that the Demon Emperor had left 9 Demon City and joined the 6 Demon Gates. The 6 Demon Gates were becoming more and more active in the 9 regions. There were already rumors that the 6 Demon Gates would become the 8th great sect in the 9 regions. When Mo Skysplitter heard the discussion about the Demon Emperor, his eyes turned gloomy. The Demon Emperor's rebellion was a huge mess that 9 Demon City had never experienced in the past 10,000 years. 9 Demon City's strength was enough to be ranked first among the 7 great sections. But now, it was only around the corner. It could be seen how many people the Demon Emperor had taken away from 9 Demon City. The people from the 7 great sects are all here. Who else will come? Do you think the Demon Emperor will come? A series of discussions took place all of a sudden. The most famous cultivator of the younger generation in the 9 regions was none other than the Demon Emperor. The news of Chu Fengmian killing countless disciples of the 7 great sects in the Sinkhole Celestial Land had spread throughout the 9 realms and was a hot topic of discussion. But when it came to the 9 regions' monstrous geniuses, the first person that came to mind was the Demon Emperor. He used to be the strongest person in 9 Demon City and was said to be the leader of the demonic path. No one knew his real name. Everyone called him Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor represented his identity. The Demon Emperor leaving 9 Demon City and inheriting the 6 Demon Gates was a huge matter that shook the 9 regions. Many people were looking forward to the Demon Emperor's participation in the 9 regions' genius battle. They wanted to see if the Demon Emperor could show his true face. Ha ha ha. So many people want to see me? In the midst of the discussion, a burst of arrogant laughter descended from the sky. That voice was extremely arrogant. Even before that person arrived, everyone could tell that the person who spoke was an extremely arrogant person. There was only one person in the world who could do that. The Demon Emperor. The Demon Emperor is really here. Countless people looked up at the sky, wanting to see the Demon Emperor's true face. The first person to descend from the sky was an extremely handsome man, the Demon Emperor. Based on his appearance alone, no one would have imagined that this handsome man was the Demon Emperor who had stirred up a storm in the 9 regions. Beside the Demon Emperor, there were also 4 people who had descended together with him. These 4 people, 1 male and 1 female, followed beside the Demon Emperor. The 2 of them were rulers of the Fate Realm. Moreover, Chu Fengmian looked over and saw that they were only in their early 30s, and they looked like they were only in their 20s. 2 emperors in their early 30s. So young. Who are these 2? I've never heard of them. It's said that the 6 demon gates have 6 supremes who are extremely young emperors. These 2 must be, how terrifying. They're only in their early 30s, but they're already emperors. How can such people be willing to work for the Demon Emperor? No, look at those 2 old men. Behind the man and woman were 2 aged old men. Although the 2 old men had concealed their auras, they were able to sense the auras of the 2 old men. Although their auras were concealed, if one looked closely, they would feel a sense of terror. Chapter 954. Immortal Realm. Ancestor Wu. It was unknown who was the first to speak, breaking the silence of the ancient fighting ring. The 2 elders standing beside the Demon Emperor were Ancestor Wu of the Immortal Realm. They were the top figures in the 9 domains. The rise of the 6 paths demonic gates also happened in the past few months. Everyone had doubts about the 6 paths demon sect's strength. However, after seeing the 2 old men, all of his suspicions were gone. 2 Ancestor Wu realms. With just the 2 Ancestor Wu realms, the 6 demon sects were second only to the 7 great sects in the 9 regions. Demon Emperor, what are you doing here? Seeing the arrival of the Demon Emperor, a figure suddenly rushed out of the ancient gladiator arena. It was an elder with a giant sword on his back. It's Immortal Jianke. The appearance of the elder caused a commotion. The elder's aura was not weaker than the 2 elders behind the Demon Emperor. He was also an Immortal Realm Ancestor Wu. The Juk sword? Chu Fengmian's gaze followed the direction of Immortal Jian Quebec. However, Chu Fengmian's gaze was not on Immortal Jianke, but the giant sword on his back. The giant sword looked simple and unadorned. Layers of inscriptions were engraved on the body of the sword. When all the inscriptions were combined, they faintly formed the words Juk. Damn it! Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. The Juk sword was one of the swords of the former Master of Sword Principle. It was later given to Chu Fengmian's 4th senior brother. He did not expect it to fall into the hands of the Tianjin sect. Young Master? Gu Jin, who was sitting beside Chu Fengmian, seemed to be shocked by Chu Fengmian's killing intent. This was the first time she saw Chu Fengmian's killing intent. It was terrifying to the extreme. Even she, who was sitting beside him, could not help but shudder at the murderous intent. I'm fine. Hearing Gu Jin's words, Chu Fengmian's killing intent gradually dissipated. No, it should be said that he hid his killing intent. He buried it in the bottom of his heart. Now was not the time for revenge. He could not reveal Chu Fengmian's identity. This was the ancient fighting arena, and it was unknown how many experts from the 7 great sects were hidden inside. Once Chu Fengmian's identity was exposed, he would definitely be attacked by the crowd. However, there would be a day when Chu Fengmian would slaughter the 7 great sections. At that time, he would have to take everything back by himself. Although Chu Fengmian's killing intent was shocking, it didn't attract too much attention. The attention of most of the cultivators present was still focused on the sky, on the body of Sage Jianke, who had suddenly appeared. Enlightened Jianke rushed out. The two ancestors of the Six Paths Demon sect looked solemn as they stood in front of the Demon Emperor to block him. "Don't panic." The Demon Emperor waved his hand and said to the two old men. The two old men quietly retreated and stood beside the Demon Emperor. "Demon Emperor, what are you doing here?" Sage Jian said to the Demon Emperor. "You killed countless disciples of the Tianjin sect. How dare you come here today?" "Oh? Why wouldn't I dare? Everyone can participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Why can't I come?" The Demon Emperor sneered as he faced Venerable Jian Quebec. "Also, those useless people of the Tianjin sect are dead. My Six Paths Demon sect will dominate the 9 regions again. Those who refuse to submit will all die." The Demon Emperor's words were extremely arrogant, but no one dared to laugh at him after hearing them. The Six Paths Demon sect indeed stood at the top of the 9 regions and dominated the 9 regions. "Good. Good. As expected of the Demon Emperor. You're really arrogant." Another figure soared into the sky from the ancient battleground and stood beside the Demon Monarch, facing him in the air. It was the young sect master of the Tianjin sect, Jianwang. "Elder Jian, today is the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. It's better not to make a big fuss." Jianwang spoke casually to Sage Jian Quebec. At the same time, he looked at the Demon Emperor. "Demon Emperor, I know why you're here. Since you're here to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, we'll meet in the arena sooner or later. I'll kill you then. I'll kill you." The words sword immortal slaying sword were heart-wrenching, just like his name. Sword slaying immortals, every action and every word was like a sharp sword, making it impossible for people to withstand. "Then I'll wait for you." When the Demon Emperor heard Jianwang's words, a cold smile appeared on his face. After which, his figure landed in the ancient fighting arena. The cultivators of the Six Paths Demon Gate beside him followed the Demon Emperor and descended to the ground. He's the Demon Emperor? He's even more arrogant than the one who started the legendary land. No matter how strong the Demon Emperor is, he's only in the heart-tempering realm. He hasn't even become an emperor yet. How can he fight against Jianwang? Is he the peak of the younger generation? One of the warriors looked at the realm of the Demon Emperor and asked in a puzzled manner. The Demon Emperor's realm was only in the heart-tempering realm. If he was placed in the younger generation, he would be considered a genius. However, this was only an evaluation of ordinary people. The legendary Demon Emperor was someone who could stand at the peak of the younger generation like sword-cutting immortal and desolate void. In this case, the heart-tempering realm was indeed somewhat lacking. What do you know? Realm? Don't judge the Demon Emperor's strength by his realm. Upon hearing that martialist's words, another martialist suddenly sneered. Before the Demon Emperor stepped into the life and death realm, his strength was already comparable to an ancestor. When he was in the immortal realm, he killed 2 emperors with his own hands. Do you still think that his realm is too low? It should be said that his current realm has already reached the heart-tempering realm. I'm afraid that he's even more terrifying than the last time he appeared. Life and death realm, comparable to an ancestor? An immortal realm cultivator killed an emperor? Upon hearing this warrior's words, many warriors in the surrounding crowd exclaimed in surprise. Such a thing would only happen in legends. Who would have thought that it would actually happen? An immortal realm cultivator could kill an emperor. The Demon Emperor's strength couldn't be judged by his realm. Let's see. This year's Demon Emperor does have the ability to compete for the top spot. Chapter 955. The Demon Emperor has broken through so many realms in just half a month. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he saw the Demon Emperor's realm. Compared to others, Chu Fengmian still had some understanding of the Devil Emperor. After all, Chu Fengmian had already fought with the Devil Emperor in the returning Ruins Heaven. At that time, the Demon Emperor was only at the second step of the life and death steps, the immortal realm. In just half a month, the Demon Emperor had already reached the sixth step of the life and death steps, the refining heart realm. In half a month, he had broken through 4 realms. The Demon Emperor is indeed not simple. Chu Fengmian sneered. One of his goals in participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was to spar with experts, especially the Demon Emperor. In the returning ruined sky, Chu Fengmian and the Demon Emperor had yet to decide a winner. Since that was the case, he would decide the winner in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament's arena. Time passed by slowly. After the Demon Emperor, no other martialists were as amazing as the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. In this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament, there were still some powerhouses that had suddenly appeared. Some of them were members of hidden families, while others were cultivators who had obtained great opportunities. Every time the 9 Regions Genius battle was held, there would always be some unfamiliar faces appearing. For most of the martialists present, this was no longer a surprise. Most of the martialists who came to watch the 9 Regions Genius Tournament wanted to see what kind of unfamiliar faces would appear in this year's 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Another 6 hours passed. The gate of the ancient gladiator arena suddenly closed, not allowing any martialists to enter. This meant that the 9 Regions Genius Tournament had officially begun. Boom! From the center of the ancient gladiator arena, a series of roars suddenly resounded. The entire arena underwent an earth-shattering change. A gigantic boulder emerged from the center of the arena. This rock was 12 meters tall, and there were partitions between every meter. The Heaven's Chosen Stone. Chu Fengmian was familiar with this rock. It was called the Heaven's Chosen Stone. This Heaven's Chosen Stone was enough to test a martial artist's aptitude. Just like in ancient times, when the major sects recruited disciples, they had to pass through the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Every Heaven's Chosen Stone was divided into 12 layers. Every additional layer lit up represented a higher qualification of the warrior. 1 is the lowest and 12 is the highest. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had also tried the Heaven's Chosen Stone, but at that time, Chu Fengmian was simply a waste without any spirit energy. He didn't even have the qualifications to light up a single piece of it. This time, Chu Fengmian was looking forward to it. He wanted to see how many pieces he could light up this time. All martial artists, those who have been chosen, light up the Heaven's Chosen Stone in order. Taoist Jianwang flew onto the stage and injected his spiritual energy into the largest Heaven's Choice Stone. Suddenly, all the Heaven's Chosen Stones emitted a dazzling light. Every seat in the ancient battle arena was by itself. Once a seat lit up, the cultivators sitting in front of it would enter the arena one by one. He walked in front of a Heaven's Chosen Stone and lit it up. If he didn't go, it meant that he didn't want to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Every year, millions of martial artists participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. The Heaven's Chosen Stone was only the first test. If one couldn't pass the Heaven's Chosen Stone, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Taoist Jianwang, how many Heaven's Chosen Stones do we have to light up before we can participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament? A martial artist suddenly asked loudly. 4. Jianwang's elder slowly opened his mouth and said, "Those who can light up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones can officially participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament." 4. What? You can participate if you light up 4? Some of the martial artists who hadn't participated in the tournament disagreed when they heard Elder Jianwang's words. There were a total of 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones. Lighting up 4 was only 1/3 of the way. However, some of the martial artists who had participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament for the first time stiffened when they heard the number. They didn't have much confidence in themselves. Is 4 very difficult? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked Gu Jin beside him. After all, this was his first time participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Although he had heard some rumors, he wasn't clear about some of the details. It's very difficult. Gu Jin nodded and said. In the previous 9 Regions Genius Tournament, as long as a martial artist could light up 3 Heaven's Chosen Stones, they would be qualified to participate. This time, there's an extra Heaven's Chosen Stone. A cultivator who can light up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones is enough to be considered a somewhat famous genius and qualified to join the 7 major sections. It seems that the number of cultivators who can truly participate this time is less than 1%. 1% is really cruel. Without strength, you won't even be qualified to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Chu Fengmian looked at the martial artists present and couldn't help but sigh. Among these millions of young martial artists, only 1% was qualified to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. As for the rest of the people, they could only sit below and watch quietly. However, the 9 Regions Genius Tournament was indeed a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Without strength, even if one forcefully participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, they would still die. Whoosh! Whoosh! While Chu Fengmian and Gu Jin were conversing, some martial artists had already been called over and flew directly to the arena. They each chose a Heaven's Chosen Stone and poured their spiritual energy into it. Bang! Bang! 2 stones, 2 stones, 3 stones, 2 stones. Of the dozens of people who went, not a single one lit up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones. How is this possible? My aptitude is in the top 5 in the sect. How can I only light up 3 Heaven's Chosen Stones? A young martial artist looked at the Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of him and said in disbelief. He came from a small sect and had been nurtured as a genius since he was young. Now that he was participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, he didn't even qualify to participate. How could he accept this? The spectators were much calmer when it came to this matter. Every year, there would be some martial artists who came to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, but their morale would drop greatly and they would never recover. The 9 Regions Genius Tournament was so big that no one knew how many geniuses there were. Of course, there would also be some martial artists who came to the 9 Regions Genius Tournament and experienced the vastness of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Chapter 956. A figure landed on the stage and said disdainfully, "Today, I'll show you the difference between us." After saying that, the figure placed his hand on the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Thump, 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 the Heaven's Chosen Stones were lit up one by one. In the end, 6 of them were lit up. 6. Who is he? Which sect is he from? Many martial artists could not even light up 4 Heaven's Chosen Stones. The fact that 6 of them were lit up at once was enough to shock many martial artists. Even among the 7 great sects, his aptitude was not bad. He seems to be the top of the list of top 100 talents in the southern region, Mang Yun from the Black Sky sect. A martial artist suddenly remembered the identity of the person in front of him and said loudly, "The list of top 100 talents in the southern region? Isn't he a newcomer? A newcomer can light up 6 Heaven's Chosen Stones? If a famous and fortunate expert from the 9 regions had such a result, it would be useless. Many cultivators would be astonished. However, Mang Yun was just a newcomer. Not bad. Looks like the Black Sky sect has a good seedling." Some warriors nodded in agreement. Mang Yun was a dark horse that had appeared out of nowhere. Many martial artists who were preparing to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Battle remembered Mang Yun. Being able to light up 6 Heaven's Chosen Stones was enough to make him a strong opponent. "Go on. Go on." Immortal Jian Ke said slowly. "Yes." Mang Yun left the stage and stood in a special area around the stage. This area was where only those who had passed the test and were qualified to participate in the 9 Regions Genius Battle stood. The test continued. There were already quite a few warriors who had passed the test of the Heaven's Chosen Stone and stood to the side. Although the Heaven's Chosen Stones test was difficult, the number of martial artists participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament numbered in the millions. Even if 1 in 100 was chosen, there were at least tens of thousands of martial artists who could pass the test. Other than Mang Yun, there were also some new faces. They were all newcomers who were participating in the 9 Regions Genius Battle for the first time. Oh? Is that the most outstanding 7th prince of the N dynasty? On the stage, a dazzling light shot up to the sky. A young man in luxurious clothes waved his hand and poured spiritual energy into the heaven's chosen stone. Dang dang dang. From the heaven's chosen stone, a dazzling light shot up to the sky. A total of 7 stones were lit up. It was even taller than the vast cloud from before. It's said that an outstanding 7th prince has appeared in the N dynasty. It must be him. He's only a newbie after lighting up 7 gems. That's too scary. I heard that he's only in his early 20s. In the future, he might even have the chance to occupy the top 10. In this year's competition, he will definitely be able to enter the top 500. In fact, he might even be qualified to fight for the top 100. As long as one was under 100 years old, one could participate in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Therefore, if it were some newcomers, they would be able to fight their way into the top 500 or even the top 100 in the first batch. It was very likely that they would achieve very good results in the future. 7th Prince? Chu Fengmian looked at the 7th Prince. His eyes flickered as if he had used his spiritual consciousness to see through the 7th Prince's foundation. He's still hiding something. It seems that if he goes all out, he can light up 8 heaven's chosen stones. It seems that I can't underestimate the experts from the other regions. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The 9 regions were so vast that there were indeed some never-before-seen geniuses. The 7th Prince was obviously one of them. The test continued. This wasn't the first time that a cultivator had participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Their results weren't surprising. Most of them had 6 or 7 heaven's chosen stones. Because many of them were famous geniuses in the 9 regions, their results didn't cause much of a stir. No one caught Chu Fengmian's attention. What Chu Fengmian really needed to pay attention to were the Demon Emperor, Jian Zhanxian, and the others. These were the strongest of the younger generation in the 9 regions. They were Chu Fengmian's true opponents. It's your turn. Time passed little by little. Gu Jin, who was sitting beside Chu Fengmian, suddenly glowed. It was her turn to participate in the test. Yes. Gu Jin nodded her head. With a move of her body, she leaped into the arena and landed on it. She pressed her hand tightly against the heaven's chosen stone, gathered her spiritual energy, and poured it into it. Thump! A dazzling light rose from the bottom. 5, 6, 7. Only when he reached the 7th level and was about to break through to the 8th level did the dazzling light slowly disappear. The 7th floor. Who is that? I've never seen her before. Is she a newcomer? She doesn't look like someone from the 7 great sects. Black Heaven sect? Firely sect? Or is she from that martial arts family? Some of the cultivators couldn't help but discuss Gu Jin's unfamiliar face. I remember now. She's the 2nd daughter of the Gu family in Ning Province's ancient city, Gu Jin. Gu Jin? I didn't expect her to be from the Gu family. The Gu family had some reputation in the 9 regions. However, their reputation wasn't in martial arts, but in business. The Gu family was considered one of the third-rate families in the 9 regions. This girl hasn't joined any sect yet. The 7 great sects will definitely take this opportunity to rope her in. Of course. With such a terrifying aptitude, she might be able to reach the top 10 of the 9 regions genius tournament if she's nurtured properly. Sitting below the stage, some of the sect elders were sizing up Gu Jin, and they wanted to rope him in. However, they couldn't enter the arena during the test. They could only wait for the 9 regions genius tournament to end before trying to rope her in. Moreover, Gu Jin's true strength could only be displayed in the following 9 regions genius tournament. 7th floor. Not bad. Chu Fengmian nodded after seeing Gu Jin's result. It seemed that he didn't train Gu Jin for nothing. The 7th floor of the Heaven's Chosen Stone was a dazzling result in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. It was almost certain that she would be able to reach the Heavenly Mandate realm and become an emperor. Time passed bit by bit. The crowd's interest didn't decrease. Instead, they became more and more excited as the number of remaining cultivators decreased. True geniuses like Jian Zhanxian and Huang Wu hadn't made a move yet. Countless people were looking forward to seeing what kind of talent they would be tested for. Whoosh! Chapter 957. Jian Zhanxian's seat finally lit up. In an instant, Jian Zhanxian stepped into the arena like a sword. The warriors in the arena all stopped and looked in Jian Zhanxian's direction, their eyes full of anticipation. Jian Zhanxian pushed his palm into the Heaven's Chosen Stone and infused it with spiritual energy. The Heaven's Chosen Stone emitted a dazzling light that had never been seen before. The dazzling light rushed all the way to the 10th stone and slowly stopped. The 10th level. Seeing this result, many warriors sucked in a breath of cold air. Although many people had guessed that Jian Zhanxian's aptitude would be terrifying, they didn't expect him to reach the 10th level. There were only 12 levels in the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Anyone who could reach the 10th level was considered one of the most monstrous figures of an era. It's only the 10th level. Why are you so surprised? Seeing the surprise of the ordinary warriors, many of the disciples of the 7 major sects below curled their lips. The 10th level was indeed an unimaginable number for ordinary warriors. But for Jian Zhanxian, this result wasn't very good. The Heaven's Chosen Stone tested a warrior's aptitude. In terms of aptitude, Jian Zhanxian wasn't the best. Jian Zhanxian's strength came from his invincible swordsmanship and sharp sword intent. He was known as the Tianjian sect's once-in-a-thousand-years sword genius. It could be said that his true strength was even more terrifying than those tested by the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Starting from Jian Zhanxian, the geniuses of the 7 major sects all had their turns. The next person was Desolate Ancient Sect's Desolate Wu. Desolate Wu abruptly struck the Heaven's Chosen Stone with his palm. A dazzling light even more dazzling than Jian Zhanxian's shot into the sky. The 11th level. All the Heaven's Chosen Stones in front of Desolate Wu were lit up except for the most square one. This result was 1 level higher than Jian Zhanxian's. How terrifying! The last time Huang Wu participated in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament, he was only at the 10th level. That was enough for him to make it into the top 3. Who would have thought that after such a long time, he would become even stronger? Some of the martial artists who knew of Desolation's previous achievements exclaimed in surprise. On the 11th floor. He was only a step away from the 12th floor. The 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone represented the peak of a martial artist's aptitude. Throughout history, there were very few cultivators who could reach the 12th level. It was hard to find one in 1,000 years. SOSO. Desolate Void muttered to himself. He didn't reveal much joy on his face. To him, his goal was to reach the highest level, the 12th level. The result of the 11th floor was not enough to satisfy him. Gongsun Qinjue. Next was Gongsun Qinjue. He also placed his palm on the Heaven's Chosen Stone, causing the same dazzling light to resound. 10th floor. Gongsun Qinjue's results were the same as Jian Zhanxian's. However, the results of the Heaven's Chosen Stone did not represent a martial artist's strength. For example, Gongsun Qinjue had the Heaven's unique divine body. In terms of strength, he was far superior to other martial artists of the same level. In terms of aptitude, he was 10% lower than Desolate Void. However, in terms of true strength, the two of them were evenly matched. Between the two of them, neither of them could defeat the other. Their strength was about the same. Jian Zhanxian was the same. He could make up for the difference in aptitude with his sword Dao. Soon, it was the turn of the remaining 9 regions geniuses to take the test. Yao Zhe, 10th floor. Wu Hongtian, 11th floor. Xing Xianqing, 10th floor. Mo Lai Tian, 10th floor. These results were all at the top of the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. It could be said that if these people didn't really fight, no one would be able to determine who was the best. However, in this batch, other than these people, there was another anomaly. The gazes of countless people turned towards the Demon Emperor. This was MOD's first time participating in the 9 Regions Genius Tournament. Countless people were looking forward to seeing MOD's aptitude. Everyone was looking forward to this moment. A ray of light shot up to the sky from MOD's seat. In the blink of an eye, the Demon Emperor landed on the arena. Without any hesitation, MOD placed his palm on the Heaven's Chosen Stone. Immediately, a dazzling ray of light shot up to the sky. This ray of light was more dazzling than any other martial artist's. Countless people's eyes were fixed on the Heaven's Chosen Stone. 9, 10, 11, this ray of light rushed to the 11th floor, but it still didn't stop. It even continued to rush to an even higher peak. 12. Boom! A deafening sound reverberated from the Heaven's Choice Stone. The entire Heaven's Chosen Stone shone with a dazzling golden light. 12 floors. All 12 floors of the Heaven's Chosen Stone have been lit up. This is too terrifying. What a terrifying aptitude. In the 9 regions, there hasn't been a martial artist who could light up all 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones for at least 1,000 years. Countless martial artists looked at the completely lit Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of MOD, dumbfounded. All 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones were lit up. This was something that only happened in legends. It was said that any martial artist who could light up all 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones was enough to stand at the top of the 9 regions. They were destined to rule the world in the future. Jianwang couldn't do it. Huang Wu couldn't do it. But now, MOD did it. At that instant, almost everyone, including Sword Celestial and the others, were stunned. All hail the Sacred Lord. The Mandate of Heaven. The Sovereign descends. All the disciples of the 6 Paths Demon Gate in the spectator stands shouted loudly. They followed the Demon Emperor and saw the Demon Emperor crushing everything. They were all excited to the extreme. Terrifying. I can't believe MOD's aptitude is so terrifying. This person's strength hasn't reached the destiny realm and hasn't become an emperor. We might be able to defeat him. That's right. The 12 floors of the Heaven's Chosen Stone represent the Sovereign descends. We have to kill him before he grows. Otherwise, none of us will be able to compete with him. Jianwang, Huang Wu, and the others' eyes were filled with murderous intent. They were the top geniuses of the 9 regions. Naturally, they weren't willing to be trampled underfoot. The Heaven's Chosen Stone represented aptitude. MOD was too young. He hadn't reached the destiny realm and hadn't become an emperor. For them, there was a chance that they could kill MOD. The Demon Emperor glanced at the Heaven's Chosen Stone with a satisfied look in his eyes. Then, he slowly descended from the arena. It wasn't until MOD left that the crowd slowly regained their senses. They were extremely excited. Chapter 958. The 12th level. As expected, the Demon Emperor is my greatest opponent. Asterisk, he had heard of the legend of the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. The Heaven's Chosen Stone was chosen by the heavens. Being able to light up all 12 levels of the Heaven's Chosen Stone meant that one had inherited the will of the heavens. One would definitely rule the world in the future. This rumor was a little exaggerated. However, those who could really reach the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone were all rare geniuses. Rising Sword slaying immortals, Desolate Void, and the others were all a level higher. As long as they didn't die prematurely, they would definitely become unparalleled experts in the future. It is said that in every era, only one person can reach the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. I wonder if I can break it today. Chu Fengmian looked at the Heaven's Chosen Stone in the arena and muttered to himself. His eyes were filled with eagerness to give it a try. In terms of aptitude, Chu Fengmian didn't think he was worse than anyone else. In terms of spiritual veins, Chu Fengmian didn't have spiritual veins, but divine veins. It was said that in every era, there was only one person who could rule the world. However, Chu Fengmian felt that he was worse than the demon emperor. He, Chu Fengmian, was a person who defied common sense. He had lived 2 lives, condensed the divine veins, and condensed the divine body of ice and fire. He had done too many things that others couldn't. At this time, Chu Fengmian's seat finally lit up. "It's my turn." Chu Fengmian's figure flashed and landed on the arena in an instant. There were about 100 heaven's chosen stones in the arena. Chu Fengmian walked toward the nearest one. At this time, another figure landed from the stands and directly stood in front of Chu Fengmian. "Boy, get out of here. Don't waste time here." This figure suddenly stood in front of Chu Fengmian and said disdainfully. This was a young man with a huge sword on his back. He was obviously a disciple of the Tianjin sect. He glanced at Chu Fengmian with a cold arrogance in his eyes, as if he was giving an order. "I'm talking to you. Don't you understand? Get out of here, lest you interfere with my test." Chu Fengmian glanced at the Tianjin sect disciple. Chu Fengmian had seen a lot of arrogant people, but this Tianjin sect disciple was obviously more arrogant than most of the people he had met. However, this person did have the qualifications to be arrogant. Chu Fengmian looked over. The young man was around 30 years old, but he had already reached the destiny state and became a ruler. Among the countless geniuses in the 9 regions, a 30-year-old ruler could be considered the most monstrous. He did have the right to be arrogant. Unfortunately, none of this was a reason to be arrogant in front of Chu Fengmian. "I've seen a lot of arrogant people, but you're the first one who's so brainless." Chu Fengmian looked at the Tianjin sect disciple and suddenly changed the topic. "Kid, what do you think of our bet? Let's bet on the heaven's chosen stone. If your talent is higher than mine, my life is yours. You can kill me or cut me up as you wish. Of course, if my talent is higher than yours, your life is also mine. Do you dare to bet on this?" As soon as Chu Fengmian's voice fell, countless eyes looked over. When these martial artists saw the Tianjin sect disciple in front of Chu Fengmian, they all looked at Chu Fengmian with miserable eyes. This kid actually wants to bet with Song Yao? Is this guy crazy? Bet on his life? Is he simply courting death? It seems that this is a hothead. He doesn't even know Song Yao's identity, yet he still dares to bet. Song Yao is the youngest ruler in the Tianjin sect. Betting on the heaven's chosen stone with Song Yao? He's simply courting death. Sounds of discussion could be heard. They looked at Chu Fengmian as if he were a dead man. In their opinion, Chu Fengmian was indeed too impulsive. It was just to snatch a heaven's chosen stone, so there was no need to fall out with him. Saying such words now was simply forcing himself into a dead end. "What? You want to bet with me? Bet on the heaven's chosen stone?" When Song Yao heard Chu Fengmian's words, he laughed loudly as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Ha ha ha, a piece of trash dares to bet with me? Kid, it seems that you don't even know my identity. Since you are ignorant, kneel on the ground and kowtow to me 3 times. Then, today's matter can be considered over." Who is this kid? How dare he provoke Song Yao? Is he courting death? This kind of kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth appears every year. But since he provoked Song Yao, it can only be considered as bad luck. The martial artists in the stands also looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at an idiot. Song Yao's aptitude was enough to be called the top among martial artists in their 50s. This was his first time participating in Song Yao's competition. Everyone already had high hopes for him. At the very least, he had the aptitude to light up the 7th or even the 8th level. As for Chu Fengmian, he was simply a nobody. Many people had never seen Chu Fengmian before. The result was obvious. Identity? You're just a Tianjin sect disciple. Who cares about your identity? Chu Fengmian heard the crowd's discussion and sneered. If you don't dare, then forget it. Are the people of the Tianjin sect a bunch of cowards? Chu Fengmian's voice was deliberately loud. Not only the entire arena, but even the martial artists in the stands heard it clearly. "Kid, are you courting death?" Song Yao's smile suddenly stopped and his face darkened. "Very well, I've already given you a chance. Since you don't know how to cherish it, then you can go to hell. I'll bet with you. Kid, watch carefully. Prepare to kill yourself." Song Yao looked at Chu Fengmian with disdain and bombarded the Heaven's Chosen Stone with his palm. Immediately, the Heaven's Chosen Stone shone with a dazzling light. This light only stopped when it reached the 9th Heaven's Chosen Stone. The 9th level. Song Yao's aptitude actually reached the 9th level. This result caused a wave of exclamations. This was Song Yao's first time participating in the 9 Regions Genius competition. He could use the Heaven's Chosen Stone to stay at the 9th level. This was extremely shocking. One had to know that Jian Zhanxian's first time had only reached the 8th level. "Humph, kid, it's your turn. It's not too late to admit defeat. I can still leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, when you fall into my hands, I'll let you know what pain is." Song Yao looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. The 9th level. This number was weaker than Jian Zhanxian's. In this 9 Regions Genius competition, this number was close to the top 10. Chapter 959. Oh? After being so arrogant for so long, you're only at the 9th level? I thought you could reach the 12th level. Your arrogance knows no bounds. Chu Fengmian said disdainfully as he watched the 9th level left by Song Yao gradually extinguish. Only the 9th level? Then let me see how many levels you can reach. Song Yao laughed at Chu Fengmian's words. From his point of view, Chu Fengmian was just putting up a strong front. "Hurry up, a piece of trash. Let's see how arrogant you can be." "Is that so?" Chu Fengmian sneered. He moved his feet and slowly walked to the Heaven's Choice Stone. Then, he slapped it with his palm. The Heaven's Choice Stone had a unique devouring ability. When Chu Fengmian's palm landed on it, all of his spiritual energy was mobilized and poured into the stone. Thump, thump, thump. The Heaven's Choice Stone devoured spiritual energy. The dazzling golden light began to climb crazily. The speed of the climb was simply too fast for people to see clearly. In an instant, all 12 Heaven's Choice Stones lit up at the same time. Boom! A dull sound was emitted from the Heaven's Choice Stone. This sound was exactly the same as when the Demon Emperor reached the 12th level. The warriors in the stands originally wanted to see Chu Fengmian make a fool of himself. However, the scene in front of them made their eyeballs almost fall out. The 12th level. Another 12th level. Impossible. Is the Heaven's Choice Stone broken? Looking at the scene in front of them, countless warriors were somewhat in disbelief. The 12th level of the Heaven's Choice Stone was a rare occurrence in the legendary land. Although it was shocking that the Demon Emperor could detect the 12th level of the Heaven's Choice Stone, it was still acceptable. After all, that was the Demon Emperor, known as the peerless genius who revived the Demon Tao. Even if Jian Zhanxian and the others suddenly reached the 12th level, it would not be too surprising. However, Chu Fengmian was a newcomer who they had never seen before. In the entire ancient gladiator arena, only a few people had seen Chu Fengmian. Even the people from the 7 major sects might not know that Chu Fengmian was the person who killed countless of their disciples. This is impossible. Song Yao stared at the Heaven's Chosen Stone with wide eyes. Then, he closed his eyes and shook his head. But when he opened his eyes again, all he saw were 12 lit-up Heaven's Chosen Stones. Even the dazzling light of the Heaven's Chosen Stone did not dissipate. Instead, it became even more dazzling. It hasn't ended yet? What's going on? Why isn't it over yet? The results of the Heaven's Chosen Stone only lasted for 5 seconds before disappearing. But now, the Heaven's Chosen Stone was still emitting a dazzling golden light. In fact, this golden light was even brighter than before. Crack! A slight cracking sound was inadvertently heard. Only Chu Fengmian, who was closest to him, could hear his voice. In the face of Chu Fengmian's power, the heaven's chosen stone actually began to crack. Not good. Chu Fengmian was shocked. He didn't expect the heaven's chosen stone to be unable to withstand Chu Fengmian's power. A crack had already appeared on it. If this continues, the heaven's chosen stone will shatter. With a thought, Chu Fengmian withdrew all of his spiritual power. The heaven's chosen stone gradually calmed down. This time, the way everyone looked at Chu Fengmian changed. Chu Fengmian dared to bet with Song Yao. This was not stupidity, but confidence. Absolute confidence. Even if Chu Fengmian gambled with Jian Zhanxian and the others, he would still win the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone. No, impossible. There must be something wrong with the heaven's chosen stone. Song Yao was still muttering to himself when the light of the heaven's chosen stone disappeared. He refused to believe it. Boy, you must have cheated. There can only be one person with the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone in an era. There can't be two people. Song Yao looked at Chu Fengmian and suddenly recalled an ancient rumor. He roared loudly. How can a little guy in the god martial realm have such terrifying aptitude? I know, you must have known there was something wrong with the heaven's chosen stone, so you deliberately cheated to bet with me. Elder Jian Ke, this boy cheated. Quick, he violated the rules. Kill him! Song Yao shouted loudly. The dazzling light of the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone shocked and lightened Jian Quebec. His figure suddenly appeared in front of Chu Fengmian. His eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. The heaven's chosen stone was passed down from the ancient gladiator arena from ancient times. It might have been damaged after hundreds of thousands of years. Enlightened Jian Ke pondered for a moment and said. He was not too careful. Chu Fengmian actually had enough aptitude to reach the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone. Enlightened Jian Ke wasn't the only one. Everyone else had the same thought. They were somewhat skeptical. Especially according to the legend, there could only be one person with the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone in an era. According to the legend, it was impossible for two people with the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone to appear in an era. Damaged? Chu Fengmian couldn't help but laugh when he heard enlightened Jian Ke's words. The expert who built the ancient gladiator arena was probably someone who stood at the peak of the 9 regions. How could the heaven's chosen stone be damaged? Boy, do you dare to try again? Song Yao seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw as he looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted coldly. If you really have the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone, then try again. It's impossible for a piece of trash who came out of nowhere to light up the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone. Why wouldn't I dare to light it up again? However, your life is now mine. You don't have the right to bet with me. Chu Fengmian looked at Song Yao and sneered. How about this? I'll give you another chance. Take out a sword totem and I'll bet with you again. If I can't light up the 12th level of the heaven's chosen stone, my life will still belong to you. Do you dare to accept this bet? Sword totem? Song Yao was stunned when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. The sword totem was the most precious treasure for a sword cultivator. There were only 19 totems in the world, and each one recorded the most ancient sword techniques. All the sword techniques in the world were derived from the records of the sword totem. The significance of a sword totem to a sword cultivator was no less than that of an extreme immortal weapon. Its value was extraordinary. Even Song Yao didn't have such a treasure. What, you don't accept? I've already given you a chance. If you don't accept, then I'll take your life. Chu Fengmian looked at Song Yao and said coldly. Song Yao, bet with him. Chapter 960. Countless people looked in the direction of the voice. The person who spoke was Jian Zhanxian. Apparently, even Jian Zhanxian didn't believe that Chu Fengmian had the aptitude for the 12th layer of the heaven's chosen stone. A wooden totem as tall as a person flew out from Jian Zhanxian's hand. It turned into a ray of light and suddenly flew over, landing in front of Chu Fengmian and Song Yao. A sword totem. At a glance, this wooden totem only had some ancient patterns. The swordsmanship recorded in this sword totem was obscure. Even most sword cultivators would find it difficult to comprehend even a little bit of it. Only sword cultivators who had reached the Emperor realm were qualified to comprehend a thing or two from this sword totem land. Once, the master of the sword Dao had 3 sword totems. However, with the fall of the master of the sword Dao, they should have fallen into the hands of the Tianjian sect. For Chu Fengmian, if he wanted to comprehend swordsmanship, the sword totem was the best choice. Chu Fengmian only wanted to make Song Yao pay the price for his arrogance. Since Song Yao wanted to go back on his word, Chu Fengmian didn't mind making the Tianjian sect pay a bigger price. Oh? The 19th totem? It's average, but it's still a sword totem. Chu Fengmian glanced at it and saw that this sword totem was the smallest of the 19. It was also the one with the least swordsmanship recorded. However, it was enough for Chu Fengmian. Boy, I'll bet with you. If you can't get the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone, I'll kill you. Song Yao looked at Chu Fengmian and roared ferociously. It was a coincidence that Chu Fengmian could get the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone by chance. He didn't believe that Chu Fengmian could succeed again. Then watch carefully. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. He slowly walked to the other Heaven's Chosen Stone and injected spiritual energy into it. All eyes in the ancient gladiator arena were fixed on Chu Fengmian. It was extremely quiet. They couldn't believe that Chu Fengmian could really light up the 12th layer of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. However, the scene just now still stimulated their emotions. Everyone's gaze fell on the Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of Chu Fengmian, waiting nervously. The Heaven's Choice Stone also emitted a dazzling light. In the blink of an eye, all 12 layers of the Heaven's Choice Stone were lit up. Boom! The dull sound once again came from the Heaven's Chosen Stone. 12 levels. It's the 12th level again. The martial artists around the ancient fighting ring were all stunned. The Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of Chu Fengmian emitted another 12 layers of light. In the capital of the 9 realms, it was hard to find a genius who could light up the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone in 1,000 years. But today, Chu Fengmian had actually done it. Under the astonished gazes of countless people, Chu Fengmian's figure slowly moved again. Chu Fengmian walked towards another Heaven's Chosen Stone. What is he trying to do? Could it be that he wants to try again? Countless people stared at Chu Fengmian in silence. He watched as Chu Fengmian once again arrived in front of a Heaven's Chosen Stone and injected spiritual energy into it. Boom! The dull sound once again came from the Heaven's Chosen Stone in front of Chu Fengmian. All 12 layers of the Heaven's Chosen Stone were lit up. 3 Heaven's Chosen Stones had been lit up in a row. If there was only one stone, there might be a problem. But if there were 2 or 3 in a row, then there would definitely be no problem. There was no doubt that Chu Fengmian's aptitude was indeed the 12th level. Impossible. Song Yao stared blankly at the Heaven's Chosen Stone being sized up. His face was already ashen. Every Heaven's Chosen Stone that was lit up stimulated Song Yao. A person that he didn't put in his eyes was actually able to light up 12 Heaven's Chosen Stones. This was something that he didn't even dare to dream of. How is it possible? This sword Dao totem is mine. Chu Fengmian couldn't be bothered with the dazed Song Yao. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed the sword Dao totem on the stage and put it into his empty ring. Spiritual Master Jian Kei's eyes flickered. When Chu Fengmian made his move, he almost stepped forward to stop him. The sword Dao totem was one of the most important treasures in the Tianjian sect. He couldn't bear to give it away. He couldn't wait to snatch it away from Chu Fengmian's hands. But this bet was made in the arena under the watchful eyes of the audience. If the Tianjian sect went back on their word, then the Tianjian sect would lose all credibility in the 9 regions. Many thanks. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a smile. Originally, he just wanted to teach Song Yao a lesson. But now, he had gained another sword Dao totem. With this sword Dao totem, Chu Fengmian's 9 region sword technique could be improved. After Chu Fengmian retrieved the sword principal totem, he walked up to Tsang Yao and said calmly to Tsang Yao, "Kneel." Tsang Yao's expression was still a little sluggish. He only reacted when Chu Fengmian walked past him and heard his words. "What did you say?" "I told you to kneel. Your life is already mine. You'll do whatever I want you to do." Chu Fengmian looked at Tsang Yao and curled his lips. "What? The disciple of the Tianjin sect doesn't want to fulfill the bet? You!" Tsang Yao pointed at Chu Fengmian with a gloomy face. He originally thought that Chu Fengmian would leave after obtaining the sword Dao totem. He didn't expect that he would really have to fulfill the bet. Bet his life? Give his life to Chu Fengmian? Of course, Tsang Yao couldn't do that. Asking him to kneel under the watchful eyes of the audience was the greatest humiliation. As the youngest emperor of the Tianjin sect, it was impossible for him to kneel in front of Chu Fengmian. Tsang Yao's eyes revealed a hint of viciousness. He, an emperor, was forced to this point by a great ancestor. If they weren't in the arena, Tsang Yao would have attacked and killed Chu Fengmian. He didn't care about the bet. However, this was the ancient gladiator arena. In front of countless experts, he didn't dare to do so. "Young man, when it's possible to let people off, you should spare them. You've taken advantage of them, so don't push them too far." Spiritual Master Jian Ke, who was standing to the side, suddenly spoke slowly to ease the situation. "You've already obtained the sword Dao totem. You may leave." If Tsang Yao knelt today, it wouldn't just be Tsang Yao who lost face, but the entire Tianjin sect. Tsang Yao was the youngest emperor cultivated by the Tianjin sect. To a certain extent, he represented Tsang Yao's face. If Tsang Yao really knelt today, or even died at the hands of Chu Fengmian, the Tianjin sect would really lose face. Chapter 961. Perfected Jian Ke pondered for a moment and then spoke slowly. He believed that Chu Fengmian would know when to advance and when to retreat. He had already made himself clear. Knowing when to stop would be beneficial to everyone. He believed that Chu Fengmian would consider it carefully. If both sides took a step back today, the Tianjin sect wouldn't lose face. It would be fine as long as Chu Fengmian offered some compensation. It wasn't a big deal to offer some compensation to a supreme great ancestor. Compensation? Chu Fengmian suddenly laughed when he heard perfected Jian Ke's words. Compensation? Chu Fengmian's current wealth wasn't even comparable to that of a supreme great ancestor. Chu Fengmian didn't need any compensation. Moreover, he wasn't interested in negotiating with the Tianjin sect. Since Tsang Yao dared to provoke Chu Fengmian wanted nothing but his life. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a disdainful smile. In that case, the people of the Heavenly Sword sect intend to go back on their word? Chu Fengmian's words caused an uproar. How could the warriors present not understand the importance of Tsang Yao? He was the youngest supreme great ancestor of the Tianjin sect. If he really died at Chu Fengmian's hands today, it would be a joke. Since perfected Jian Ke had spoken, Chu Fengmian should also take a step back. Is this guy crazy? Does he really want to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Tianjin sect? Some of the warriors' expressions didn't change. They couldn't understand Chu Fengmian's actions. You want Tsang Yao's life? Sure, if the Tianjin sect offers me another sword principal totem, I can let him go. Chu Fengmian looked at perfected Jian Ke and sneered. Another sword principal totem? Perfected Jian Ke's face showed some anger when he heard Chu Fengmian's outrageous demand. Did he think that sword principal totems were cabbages? The Tianjin sect only had 8 sword principal totems. Now that they had lost one to Chu Fengmian, they only had 7 left. Offer another one in exchange for Tsang Yao? That was impossible. The value of a sword path totem was higher than that of a ruler. Young man, don't be greedy. If you're too greedy, be careful that you don't stuff yourself to death. Reverend Jian sneered. This condition is absolutely impossible. Please change it. Really? I've already given you a condition. Since you don't want to accept it, I'll take this guy's life. Chu Fengmian completely ignored Reverend Jian's threat. The Tianjian sect, as one of the 7 major sects, won't break the contract? Brat, I'm standing here today. Let's see what you can do to me. Song Yao suddenly roared. He had already made up his mind to break the agreement. No matter how important his face was, it was not as important as his own life. So what if Chu Fengmian's aptitude was high? No matter how high Chu Fengmian's aptitude was, he was only at the divine martial realm, a mere ancestor on the 5th step of the life and death steps. Moreover, he was a ruler. Even if he broke his promise, what could Chu Fengmian do to him? Song Yao's words were met with boos from the audience. Perhaps everyone could guess that Song Yao would not obediently fulfill his promise. However, it was shameful for him to break his promise in front of everyone. However, Song Yao did not care at all. It was impossible for him to kneel in front of Chu Fengmian today. Break the contract? Is this how the Tianjian sect does things? Chu Fengmian looked at Reverend Jian, who ignored him, and questioned him. Song Yao is no longer a disciple of the Tianjian sect. I've already expelled him. This matter is between the 2 of you. It has nothing to do with the Tianjian sect. Reverend Jian calmly spoke from the side. There was a cold sneer in his eyes. Today, he would first draw a line between himself and the Tianjian sect. In any case, he did not believe that Chu Fengmian had the ability to deal with Song Yao. Shameless. Some of the martial artists in the stands cursed in a low voice. At this time, Reverend Jian suddenly said that he would expel Song Yao from the Tianjian sect. Wasn't it because he did not want Chu Fengmian to threaten the Tianjian sect? When the time came, even if Song Yao broke the contract, it would be his own action. It would have nothing to do with the Tianjian sect. Humph. Reverend Jian coldly snorted when he heard the discussions. His cold snort silenced the discussions in the audience. No one was willing to provoke the anger of a supreme ancestor. I'll leave today's matter to you all. With that, Reverend Jian retreated to the side, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. Oh? So Song Yao is no longer a disciple of the Tianjian sect? That's good. I was worried that if I killed him in the arena, the Tianjian sect would interfere. Since this is the case, there's nothing to worry about. Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a cold smile as he spoke casually. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian suddenly grabbed at Song Yao with his palm. Kill me? I'd like to see if you have the ability to do so. Song Yao said disdainfully when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. The difference between a supreme ancestor and an emperor was like the difference between heaven and earth. The moment Song Yao spoke, he gathered his spiritual power and drew his sword. The sword light burst out and pierced toward Chu Fengmian's chest. In for a penny, in for a pound. Since he had broken the contract, he might as well kill Chu Fengmian directly. Otherwise, there would be endless trouble. A martial artist with a talent of the 12th layer of the heaven's chosen stone must not mature. Now is the best time to kill Chu Fengmian. Despicable. He actually wants to kill him at this time? The countless cultivators in the stands had already seen through Song Yao's thoughts, and they all cried out in surprise. Song Yao not only broke the contract, but now he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian directly. As the supervisor, Reverend Jian turned his back to all of this, as if he didn't notice and didn't care. Young master, be careful. Seeing Song Yao suddenly draw his sword, Gu Jin hurriedly reminded him. However, her words were unnecessary. Chu Fengmian's palm suddenly grabbed at Song Yao's sword. The blade of Song Yao's hand was tightly grasped by Chu Fengmian. In the next moment, countless cracks appeared on Song Yao's sword and it was forcefully crushed just like that. What? This? How is this possible? Seeing Song Yao's sword being crushed by Chu Fengmian's hand, countless martial artists were shocked. They rubbed their eyes and couldn't believe what they were seeing. In the next moment, an even more unbelievable scene appeared. Chu Fengmian's spiritual power fell from his palm, and an enormous claw of a war dragon condensed in the sky and descended. Chapter 962. Song Yao was kneeling on the ground. His clothes were torn to shreds, and he was spitting out blood. He looked battered and exhausted. He no longer had the demeanor of the Tianjian sect's youngest emperor. Song Yao used to be a famous genius in the capital of the Nine Zones. He was the object of everyone's admiration and respect. But now, he was kneeling in front of Chu Fengmian in such a sorry state. The disparity was so great that the martial artists present couldn't believe what they were seeing. They even felt like they were dreaming. Song Yao couldn't even withstand a single move from Chu Fengmian. How is this possible? Isn't he only in the divine martial realm? Song Yao is an emperor. How could he be defeated in a single move? A ruler was much more powerful than 10 great ancestors working together. Even countless geniuses couldn't surpass this gap. But now, Song Yao couldn't even resist Chu Fengmian's attack. He knelt on the ground in such a sorry state. He was defeated in a single move. It was as if Chu Fengmian was an emperor, and Song Yao was an ancestor. Their realms seemed to have been reversed. Even Song Yao himself couldn't imagine this. Chu Fengmian's power was simply beyond his ability to resist. By the time he reacted, he was already kneeling on the ground. He saw the gazes of countless people around him, and countless discussions. It was the biggest mockery to him. Damn it! You can't defeat me! Song Yao crazily roared. Both of his eyes had turned completely red as monstrous murderous intent filled the sky. Terrifying power gathered around Song Yao, and it immediately turned into a sharp sword that soared into the sky. Still trying to struggle? Chu Fengmian sneered. The battle dragon claw fell again, bombarding Song Yao's body. Song Yao spat out another mouthful of blood. Then, all the power in his body dissipated. So what if you're an emperor? In the end, you're just an ant in front of me. Kneel here. Chu Fengmian sneered. Your life is mine. I won't kill you for the time being, but give me all your essence and blood. The blood essence of an emperor was enough for the divine tree to devour and evolve. Song Yao's essence blood must not be wasted. Chu Fengmian used his finger as a sword and drew a line across Song Yao's chest. Then, Chu Fengmian made a grabbing motion. An endless stream of blood essence gushed out from the wound on Song Yao's back. Forcefully extracting his essence blood was no less painful than being skinned. Song Yao's expression was extremely hideous as he continued to scream miserably. Song Yao's screams could be heard throughout the entire ancient gladiator arena. Even a ruler could not endure this kind of pain. Song Yao! Senior brother Song Yao! When the disciples of the Tianjian sect saw Song Yao's miserable state, they couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Countless murderous intents were already staring at Chu Fengmian. A sovereign of the Tianjian sect sitting next to Jianwang shouted at Chu Fengmian. Release Song Yao. Release him? Why? Wasn't Song Yao no longer a disciple of the Tianjian sect? Does the Tianjian sect have anything to do with him? Chu Fengmian sneered indifferently when he heard the threats. Just watch from the sidelines. If you're not afraid of death, then come at me. You! I'm going to kill you. When the disciples of the Tianjian sect heard Chu Fengmian's provocation, they couldn't hold themselves back any longer. Countless rays of sword light were about to burst out. Stop! A cold and indifferent voice suddenly rang out. It was a symbol of supreme authority. Jianwang, who was sitting in the stands, slowly opened his mouth. His words caused the disciples of the Tianjian sect to withdraw their sword light one by one. Jianwang's status in the Tianjian sect was only second to the sect master. His words represented authority, and no one dared to challenge him. When it comes to Song Yao, you have to accept your loss. Since he chose to gamble with his life, it doesn't matter if he dies, Jian Zhanxian said coldly. Jian Zhanxian said coldly. He suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian. Being stared at by Jian Zhanxian was no different from being stared at by a ferocious beast. It was chilling. However, you have provoked the Heavenly Sword sect countless times in front of everyone today. The dignity of our Heavenly Sword sect is not to be trifled with. Brat, tell me your name. When we meet on the dueling ring, I'll definitely kill you. I'll definitely kill you. When these words appeared, all the martial artists present sucked in a breath of cold air. They all looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a dead man. For a figure like sword-slaying immortal, his every word and action was noticed by countless people. Every word he said was true to his word. Since he said that he would kill Chu Fengmian, if he didn't kill Chu Fengmian, he would be slapping himself in the face. It could be said that Chu Fengmian and Jian Zhanxian had formed an irreconcilable enmity. They had completely shed all pretenses of cordiality, and there was no possibility of reconciliation. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care. He originally wanted to trample Jian Zhanxian under his feet. In this year's 9 Zones Genius Tournament, any genius would eventually become a stepping stone for Chu Fengmian. There are way too many people from the Sky Sword sect who have said the same thing. Previously, there was that so-called Jian Zongjie. Even the Smoke Emperor said the same thing. It's a pity that both of their corpses must have been eaten by the beasts. Chu Fengmian smiled coldly. His face was full of confidence. The only one who will die will be you. What? Jian Zongjie and Yan Emperor both died at your hands? You are Chu Fengmian? Hearing these two names, Spiritual Master Jian Ke suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian. His eyes were filled with endless killing intent. Chu Fengmian, this name could be said to be the nightmare of the Tianjian sect. Countless Tianjian sect disciples had died at Chu Fengmian's hands. Spiritual Master Jian Ke couldn't wait to kill Chu Fengmian. However, this was the ancient arena. During the 9 Zones Genius Tournament, he couldn't do anything. Chu Fengmian? Very good. It seems that you have given me another reason to kill you. When Jian Zhanxian heard Chu Fengmian's name, the killing intent in his eyes intensified. He looked at Spiritual Master Jian Ke and said slowly, I will kill this kid in the arena. Hearing Jian Zhanxian's words, the anger on Spiritual Master Jian Ke's face calmed down. When Jian Zhanxian met Chu Fengmian in the arena, he would also kill Chu Fengmian. He would have to take such a big risk to kill someone in this ancient arena. This kid is actually Chu Fengmian. No wonder he dares to be unafraid of the Tianjian sect. Not only the Demon Emperor, but also such a fierce person. Chapter 963. They saw that Chu Fengmian was the one who did it. Many of the martial artists present calmed down. Chu Fengmian dared to kill all the disciples of the 7 major sects in the returning ruins heaven. This proved that Chu Fengmian had never been afraid of the 7 major sections. Other martial artists wouldn't have dared to do what he did today, but Chu Fengmian didn't dare to do anything. When Chu Fengmian landed in the area around the arena, other than Gu Jin, the rest of the martial artists hurriedly took a few steps back. No one wanted to have anything to do with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian and the 7 major sects had an irreconcilable grudge. Anyone who had anything to do with Chu Fengmian would be an enemy of the 7 major sections. Gu Jin was the only one who dared to get close to Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had saved Gu Jin's life, so her current achievements all belonged to Chu Fengmian. She wasn't afraid even if she had to become an enemy of the 7 major sections. I didn't expect him to come. Mod, who was sitting next to Gu Jin, sized Chu Fengmian up with hatred in his eyes. Chu Fengmian had killed 2 supremacies in the Heavenly Feather domain. It was a great loss for the 6 Paths demonic sects. This was the best opportunity for Mod to take revenge. You too, kill this kid if you see him. Mod said coldly. Yes. The 2 supremacies standing beside the Demon Emperor nodded their heads. Pairs of murderous eyes looked at Chu Fengmian. It wasn't just the Six Paths demonic sects or the Tianjin sect. Experts from the Ancient Desolate sect, Medicine King Valley, Ancient Moon Valley, Nine Demon City, Sage Monarch sect, Dubhe Temple, and even other factions like the Black Heavens sect and the Yin Dynasty. They were all looking at Chu Fengmian with murderous eyes. Some of the sects had no grudge with Chu Fengmian, but killing him was enough to exchange for countless benefits from the 7 major sections. Men died for wealth, and birds died for food. Killing Chu Fengmian would give them a lifetime of wealth. Who wouldn't want to do such a thing? Chu Fengmian condensed his spirit energy and turned it into a noble throne. He sat on the throne and looked at the murderous gazes on him with a calm expression. There were many people who wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, but Chu Fengmian didn't care. Chu Fengmian would kill every single one of them that came. He wanted to kill them until they were terrified. He wanted to kill them until they no longer dared to oppose him. Continue. Sage Jianke calmed himself down after a long time and spoke once more. The talent assessment continued. There were not many martial artists left. For hours later, there were no more warriors left in the arena. All the warriors who had come to participate in the 9 regions genius battle had completed their assessment. Chu Fengmian glanced over and saw that there were about 10,000 people left. This number was not considered much. After all, the total number of martial artists in the 9 regions was an uncountable number. These 10,000 people were already the pinnacle of the younger generation of martial artists. They were all slightly famous geniuses. What will happen next is the arena death match. Once you enter the arena, your life and death will be decided by the heavens. If you want to give up, you can withdraw now. Sage Jianke looked at the 10,000 martial artists around the arena and shouted loudly. No one responded. Those who dared to participate in the 9 regions genius battle were all geniuses of their generation. They were all people who had walked out of a sea of blood after a life and death battle. If they didn't go through a life and death battle, how could they rise from the ashes? If they wanted to become a powerhouse of their generation, they naturally didn't fear death. No one chose to withdraw. Alright, the 9 regions genius battle begins now. Sage Jianke looked at the crowd below and slowly spoke. Every 9 regions genius battle is held to nurture the geniuses of the 9 regions. This time, the prizes will not be stingy. Everyone, please take a look. As Sage Jianke spoke, he suddenly waved his hand and opened an empty ring in front of him. Inside the empty ring, one could see mountains of spirit stones piled up as far as the eye could see. There were millions of spirit stones, and every single one of them was a royal grade spirit stone. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones. Heavens, this is too terrifying. Some of the weaker martial artists were so shocked that they almost fainted. A single royal grade spirit stone was considered a great fortune for a patriarch. For example, the best heaven grade room and sky connecting tower only cost 5 royal grade spirit stones a day. Most of the patriarchs weren't willing to fork out that much money. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones was a fortune that some sovereigns couldn't accumulate in their lifetime. The prizes of the 9 regions genius battle had always been amazing. However, when they saw it in person, many people were shocked to the extreme. Chu Fengmian wasn't interested. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones was a great fortune for a patriarch. However, Chu Fengmian had a divine pulse and could condense a large amount of royal grade spirit stones at any time. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones couldn't arouse Chu Fengmian's interest at all. Could my guess be wrong? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. He had originally guessed that the Demon Emperor, the Sword Immortal, and the others had come to participate in the 9 regions genius tournament for the rewards. After all, apart from that, there was no other reason for them to participate in the 9 regions genius battle. However, although 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones was a great fortune, it shouldn't be enough for the Demon Emperor and the others. This made Chu Fengmian doubt his original guess. Soon, enlightened Master Jianke put away the empty ring after showing it to everyone. However, another empty ring appeared in enlightened Master Jianke's hand. This empty ring was opened in front of everyone by injecting spiritual power into it. There's more? What kind of treasure is that? Many martial artists were shocked when they saw the royal grade spirit stones in the first empty ring. Therefore, when the second empty ring was taken out, their gazes followed it closely. The first empty ring's prize was so amazing. According to the usual practice, the second prize would be even more valuable than the first one. 1,000,000 royal grade spirit stones and an even more valuable treasure. Chu Fengmian also looked at the empty ring and saw a jade bottle in it. What came out of the jade bottle was a drop of blood essence with the color of chaos. Chaos-colored blood essence? An innate divine beast's blood essence? Many people exclaimed when they saw the color of the blood essence. In this world, there was only one kind of life whose blood essence was chaos-colored, and that was an innate divine beast. Only an innate divine beast born from the chaos could inherit the chaos bloodline. Chapter 964. The 7 sects are willing to take out such a treasure? Chu Fengmian was a little surprised when he saw the second reward. The innate divine beast's essence blood had not appeared in the 9 domains for tens of thousands of years. The innate divine beasts of the primordial era had all fallen during the primordial era. Their essence blood had been divided among the warriors of that time. The essence blood of the innate divine beast contained the purest spiritual power in the world. To a cultivator, once they devoured a drop of innate divine beast's blood essence, the benefits they would obtain were almost endless. This was a treasure that even old ancestor Wu would want to get his hands on. How could the top 7 sects be willing to take it out now? No matter what, I have to get the innate divine beast's essence blood. Moreover, this drop of innate divine beast's essence blood contains some dragon power. It should be the essence blood of the ancestor heavenly dragon. Chu Fengmian looked at the jade bottle and enlightened Jian Kei's hand with excitement. The essence blood of the innate divine beast was enough to bring great benefits to Chu Fengmian. In particular, this drop of essence blood belonged to ancestor Jianwang. Chu Fengmian cultivated the battle dragon skill. It could be said that his body was close to the state of half-human and half-dragon. Once he got the essence blood of ancestor Jianwang, it was enough to make Chu Fengmian's bloodline undergo a qualitative change. The benefits it could bring were almost indescribable. Chu Fengmian must get this drop of essence blood. Oh my god, the essence blood of the innate divine beast. Didn't the innate divine beast disappear in the primordial era? How could there be essence blood left behind? Don't underestimate it just because it's a drop of essence blood. Even if it's given to a piece of trash, it's enough to make his aptitude reach the peak of the 9 regions. This is the essence blood of an innate divine beast. Just one drop is enough to cause earth-shaking changes. Beside Chu Fengmian, sounds of exclamations could be heard. When everyone looked at the primogenitor Sky Dragon's blood essence, their eyes were burning with excitement. This emperor must get this essence blood. Demon Emperor said coldly as he stared at Tianlong's blood. Whoever dares to fight for it must die. The Demon Emperor was determined to obtain the blood essence of ancestor Tianlong. If he could obtain it, he would be able to suppress everyone and truly become the #1 warrior of the younger generation in the 9 regions. Not only the Demon Emperor, but Jian Zhanxian, Desolation, and the others also had the same thought. Their strength came from sowing seeds, and when they fought against each other, they had always been duping each other. However, whoever obtained this drop of progenitor Tianchang's essence blood would undergo a qualitative change. At that time, he would be able to firmly suppress everyone and become the pinnacle of the younger generation of the 9 regions. This year's 9 regions genius battle was enough to attract all of them. Many of them already knew about it. What were the rewards for this year's 9 regions genius battle? This Khanate divine beast blood essence is the second reward. Now, there's the last reward. While everyone was still in a state of shock, before they could react, enlightened Jian Kei said again. His words caused an uproar among the crowd. What? There's more? The Khanate divine beast blood essence isn't the most precious reward? Originally, everyone had thought that the Khanate Divine Beast Blood Essence would be the final reward of this year's 9 Regions Genius Battle. Who would have thought that there would be more? According to the rules, the third reward would be even more precious than the Khanate Divine Beast Blood Essence. All eyes were fixed on Jiankei's elder. Jiankei's elder slowly put away the empty ring that contained the jade bottle and took out another empty ring. When he opened the empty ring again, the scene inside was displayed before everyone's eyes. What exactly is this? The Khanate Divine Beast Blood Essence is even more precious than this? The warriors present couldn't wait to see what was inside the empty ring. The empty ring was empty and lonely. There was only a jade talisman lying quietly inside. A jade talisman? A jade talisman? Seeing the jade talisman, many warriors' eyes were filled with surprise. It seemed that they hadn't expected this. The value of this jade talisman was actually more precious than the Khanate Divine Beast Blood Essence. This jade talisman is the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven. Anyone who obtains this jade talisman will be qualified to enter Wanbao Heaven. Sage Jiankei said calmly. The jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven. What? It's actually the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven? How can it be? Hasn't Wanbao Heaven been closed for a long time? How can there be a jade talisman? Some of the ancient sovereigns exclaimed in surprise when they heard Sage Jiankei's words. Countless burning eyes immediately looked at the jade talisman. Some of the elites couldn't wait to snatch it away. Wanbao Heaven was one of the treasured lands that was on par with returning Ruined Sky. In some aspects, Wanbao Heaven was even more famous than returning Ruined Sky. It was said that Wanbao Heaven was a treasured land. Countless powerful spiritual weapons of the 9 regions were taken out from Wanbao Heaven. Returning Ruined Sky opened once every 3 years. Wanbao Heaven's opening was much more unpredictable. The real location of Wanbao Heaven was still unknown to the martial artists of the 9 regions. They only knew that after some time, some jade talismans of Wanbao Heaven would appear in the 9 regions. As long as one infused spiritual energy into the jade talisman, they would be taken to Wanbao Heaven. However, Wanbao Heaven had not appeared for thousands of years. This time, the jade talisman was obtained by the 7 great sects, and it was taken out directly. They didn't keep the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven for themselves, but took it out instead. Entering Wanbao Heaven was one of the greatest opportunities in the 9 regions. It was said that Wanbao Heaven had an extreme path celestial weapon. If one entered and obtained an extreme path celestial weapon, one would be able to stand at the top of the 9 regions. The 7 great sects took out Wanbao Heaven's jade talisman. Indeed, it was enough to shock people. It's said that the jade talisman of Wanbao Heaven was obtained by the 7 great sects together. They couldn't divide it among themselves, so they could only bring it to the 9 regions genius battle for it. After all, the champions of the 9 regions genius battle every year are the geniuses of the 7 great sects. A martial artist who had heard some rumors explained. Chapter 965. Wanbao Yin's Jade Talisman, Primogenitor Tianlong's Blood Essence, and 1,000,000 royal-grade spiritual stones. These 3 rewards were simply amazing. The rewards from the previous 9 regions geniuses battles were insignificant compared to this one. 1,000,000 royal-grade spiritual stones were still acceptable. Wanbao Yin's Jade Talisman and Primogenitor Tianlong's Blood Essence were items that even Forefather Wu dreamed of obtaining. Many of the experts present were itching to take the treasures away from enlightened Jian Quebec. However, they did not dare to do so. Enlightened Jiankei was a supreme forefather. Among the countless supreme ancestors, he was considered one of the most powerful ones. He was already standing at the peak of the 9 domains. Being able to host the 9 regions genius battle was enough to prove his strength. These 3 treasures belong to me. Jian Zhanxian stared at the 3 treasures in the sky and said coldly. He did not hide his murderous intent. Whoever dared to compete with him would be killed. Jian Zhanxian was not the only one. Huang Wu, the demon emperor, and the others had the same attitude. Everyone was determined to get their hands on the 3 treasures. Chu Fengmian was the same. He was determined to obtain the 3 treasures. If Chu Fengmian obtained the 3 treasures, especially primogenitor Jianwang's blood essence, Chu Fengmian would be able to obtain it. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could devour it again and even choose to break through to the heavenly mandate realm. Once Chu Fengmian became a sovereign, he would be like a bird flying in the sky. Even if Ancestor Wu wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, it would be impossible. No matter who obtained the 3 treasures, it did not matter. It was easy to imagine just how terrifying this 9 regions genius battle would be. The 9 regions genius battle will now begin. Those whose names are called, step forward. Enlightened Jian Ke waved his hand and condensed a water screen from the center of the arena. The water screen had been passed down from the ancient gladiator arena since ancient times. The ancient gladiator arena itself was an extremely mysterious spiritual weapon. There were more than 10,000 names on the water screen. The names of all the participants were recorded there. Chu Fengmian's name was also on the list. The names on the water screen began to combine and line up. Every time the 9 regions genius battle was held in the ancient fighting arena, it was held for the sake of fairness. The ancient gladiator arena would automatically determine the opponents and no one could interfere. Therefore, even if he were to encounter the demon emperor and the others in the first round, he could only blame it on his bad luck. The names kept spinning until the last 2 names flew out from the water curtain, shining brightly. 7th Prince of the N Dynasty. Chu Fengmian. These 2 names flew to the arena and began to expand. When they saw these 2 names, the martial artists in the stands all exclaimed in surprise. The first battle of the 9 regions genius tournament was so unusual. The 7th Prince was one of the geniuses nurtured by the Empire of Destiny. He was famous in the 9 realms. He was very likely to enter the top 500, or even the top 100. As for Chu Fengmian, needless to say, he had just shown his talent of the 12th level of the Heaven's Chosen Stone. He had become an influential figure in this year's 9 regions genius tournament. Chu Fengmian had killed Song Yao, which was enough to prove his strength. This first battle was a battle between 2 influential figures. It's my turn now? Seeing the names on the arena, Chu Fengmian smiled casually. With a move of his body, he slowly stepped into the center of the arena. As soon as he stepped into the arena, Chu Fengmian felt that the surrounding scenery began to change. It was as if he had come to a completely different space. The area of the arena had expanded by more than 10 million times. It was almost boundless. It was enough for one to fight to their heart's content. It's just as the legends say. It was Chu Fengmian's first time in the arena. He couldn't help but look around. He could roughly tell that the space in the center of the arena should have been opened up by an unparalleled expert. No matter what battle took place, the aftermath of the battle would not spread to the outside world. This made Chu Fengmian extremely satisfied. He could fight without worry in the arena. On the other side, the 7th Prince also walked into the arena from outside. He stood in the air about 100 miles away from Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian, it seems that my luck is not bad to meet you directly. The 7th Prince looked at Chu Fengmian. There was no nervousness on his face. Instead, there was a trace of excitement. I will trample you under my feet. You will become my stepping stone. Everything that happens to you will belong to me. Just as the 7th Prince's words left his mouth, a short blade suddenly appeared in the 7th Prince's hand. Hiss! In the blink of an eye, the blade broke through the air and directly slashed at Chu Fengmian. The speed of the blade was simply beyond the imagination of countless people. What a fast blade! The 7th Prince actually had such strength. The moment they saw the blade, many warriors were a little surprised. Even some of the sovereigns could not help but look more serious. This blade was enough to prove the 7th Prince's strength. It would not be easy for even a sovereign to block this blade. When the blade was slashed out, it was ever-changing. It almost turned into a sky full of blades that locked onto Chu Fengmian. At the same time, they all slashed at Chu Fengmian. Too weak. Seeing the sky full of blades coming at him, Chu Fengmian shook his head. With a flick of his sleeve, a wave of spiritual energy suddenly blasted out. This wave of spiritual energy bombarded the sky full of blades into pieces. Not a single blade was left. Such a terrifying blade was shattered in front of Chu Fengmian with a flick of his sleeve. What a strong strength! Chu Fengmian's strength is stronger than in Sovereign. What kind of experience did he have to have such a terrifying strength? It seems that the seventh prince is not a match for this person. The warriors in the stand slowly sighed. The difference in strength between the two seemed to be on a different level. However, as soon as a warrior's voice fell, his eyes suddenly flickered. No! In the arena, although the sky full of blades was shattered by Chu Fengmian, they did not disappear. Instead, in the next moment, they actually condensed again. From the top of Chu Fengmian's head, all the blades condensed in an instant and suddenly fell with a loud bang, pointing at Chu Fengmian. The seventh prince's face was somewhat ferocious. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.